All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back live for another, I guess, Pangburn Live episode. Today's question is, I just want to load it here. I made a fun thumbnail. Why do atheists hate God? As an atheist, I hear that a lot. I hear that question a lot. So we're going to explore that today. But I am just waiting for my link so I can share it around like it's hot. I would like to share it with the community. There it is. Boom, boom. Let everyone. Why do atheists hate God? All right, so I'll share that, and then I gotta share this. With all righty, that shared. Well, Brody, do you think atheists hate God, or some atheists hate God?
Not consciously. I don't think so. But I think that, like, theologically speaking, we're all, like, our default position is being enemies of God and rejecting Him. But that's probably not a helpful way to take the conversation. I think just like,
I mean, it's interesting that someone would believe that, right? Like, for me, based on my, empirical standards, my epistemic standards, I would want to know why you believe that and what kind of evidence we have. But I think you probably only have like the Bible to point to, right? And
yeah, it's one of those worldview things. It's like, this is a way of making sense of the world.
right.
And I think there's like other valid explanations, that like ways of viewing the world too. So like, if I have this worldview, which I do, that says, the reason why I do bad things and have like the reason I have selfish motivations is because like I'm rejecting God, and my heart wants what's against God. Like, that's a story that can be told. There's also the story that like the naturalist would tell that has nothing to do with God, and it explains why I do things that I know I shouldn't do. So
Right.
I don't think it's as simple as just like finding evidence for it. I think, like, honestly, I try to talk to a lot of atheists and agnostics, and I know very few that actually like hate God. I have run across them, not in this server, but except
Yeah.
for that one dude. No, that one guy. I don't know if you were present the other day, who was in here,
Oh,
who was like, "You
he
just
didn't
want
have a shirt
everyone to
on?
suck Jesus's blah blah," and
Right.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
I think he
Yeah.
actually hates Abrahamic God like
Yeah,
full
I think
stop.
some people have a hate boner for God. Something I will say though is that I do think the Abrahamic God has earned a lot of hate and vitriol.
Mm.
One of the reasons. Now I'm not saying I necessarily hate God. Now, if I'm doing an external critique, I don't think. I don't think such a God exists. I don't think God is and there's any God to blame for any of the things in nature or reality that I don't like. But looking internally, if the Christian God exists, he has to answer to me as an agent that's capable of feeling empathy and capable of my own moral calculus. I guess internally within the religious belief, I would think that he would have at least given me that ability to do that. So I'm using that way of analyzing action on God himself and saying, you could have very well created this creation without the potentiality or even the possibility of childhood leukemia, for example. So I have a lot of, I guess I could say, hate for child leukemia. And according to you, God's responsible for creating a creation that allows for childhood leukemia. So that's I think that's worthy of hatred.
Sounds like you just hate the responsibility that God gave you by giving you free will. And, in that way, you just kind of hate that you're irresponsible in the own actualization of your own free will.
Exactly. It's all my fault, right? Because I'm the one who created leukemia.
Yeah,
but like Brody,
only comes
here's
from humans.
if I could just say, I
but
think this
here's
is
a
like
crazy
a huge,
thing. Can I just ask you, as one human being to another human being, and I'm not saying you have to say God was wrong for doing this, because God might have reasons beyond what we can understand, whatever. But wouldn't this design be better if it just had one less case of childhood leukemia? Just one.
I've been asked this exact question before.
Probably by me.
No, not by you. By
okay.
Do you know Dean Withers?
Yeah. He might have stolen it. He might have stolen it from me, because I've been saying this for 10 years on the internet. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Dean and I think it was a FaceTime call I had with him, and he actually asked almost that exact question word for word.
Okay.
Yeah, like the famous, like, all else being equal is like the necessary phrase that you include in this, right? And sure, like, all else equal, one less case of leukemia, I'm fine with saying that's possibly, better than the world we have now. Sure.
Okay, I wouldn't say possibly better. I would just say demonstrably better. Like, that's one less child suffering through leukemia.
Well, I guess I didn't even take seriously all else equal, because the reason I said possibly is, like, it depends what, needs to be traded off to get there. If absolutely nothing was traded off, then
that's all I said in my proposition. That I didn't add, like, but we don't know the effects. I'm just saying the only thing that would change was that one less kid. Okay, you said of course. So that means God's design isn't morally perfect.
No.
Did you die? I just heard, oh.
No.
I think God's smiting him for his answer.
He's electrocuting him with a thunderbolt right now.
I wasn't. No, sorry. That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that to be the response. I thought you were gonna say, like, therefore God should have done it a different way.
God should have done it a different way, because that is a better, more righteous, more good design.
I disagree.
But you just didn't you just agree that would be an improvement?
Well, all else equal, but that's not. That's like.
I didn't say all else equal. That was you. I didn't add any of that language.
Oh, so you're just. Well, you have.
I'm just saying I'm saying, Brody. No. That's not. You can consider that if you want, but all I'm saying is that the exact same design God laid out, all he does is he takes his mouse on the computer and goes edit, and of all the childhood leukemias that could even possibly occur, and I'm saying, given that he gives human beings free will and whatnot, I'm saying, like, if he just said, like, despite what human beings do, because they're of course born in sin and whatever, I'm going to take out this childhood leukemia potentiality, because it's a really awful thing. So is that not just a better, more good, a more righteous design?
Not inherently, Travis. Not inherently.
I'm saying based on I'm trying to pull at your own moral sentiments.
Yeah, like, and I'm saying
because you would say right now that
the trade-off would be.
Sorry. Yeah, look, I'm not saying there is a trade-off. Don't you think God is powerful enough to just delete some kind of potentiality
I don't think
from?
it's a matter of power. I don't think that that's the thing that's an issue. I think that uh, if I believe that an all good God would create the best possible world, I do think that the best possible world includes evil and suffering.
Yeah,
Therefore,
Uh,
uh, him removing some amount of like possibility for evil and suffering would have trade-offs. So that's why I'm saying, it's not
not
necessarily true that.
necessarily. You don't well, I don't get how you're able to say that it would have trade-offs. I don't think that's fair. I think you're taking away from the
Well,
power of a God who actually created this design.
so
If you're
just to
if you're
rewind a
saying you
little bit.
don't think if you're saying you don't think he has the power to do that, then I understand that's you believe in a different God than most Christians I've talked to. But I
No, I'm
think
not, it's not an issue of power at all.
okay.
It's so this is why when you say, wouldn't it just be better if you took away this piece? I'm saying not necessarily. I'm saying there could be a trade-off that I'm not aware of, that God has a reason for including this in this world, and by removing that piece would actually lead to a net negative, and that's all I'm
So
saying. I'm
so
agnostic to it.
that's the suffering avoidance calculus that you get just engaged in. What about the other side of the lensing, the positive utilitarian lensing, in the sense of it's a great victory for human health and flourishing if we can remove any level of childhood leukemia.
Yeah,
I
this
think
is
you
the
would agree
problem
with
with
that. Like
this
Brody,
is
I got to ask
sure.
you just this straight out. Like as a
Okay.
human being, if human beings announce tomorrow that childhood leukemia has been fully cured, you're going to be like, by the grace of God, hallelujah, this is amazing, right?
Possibly, but
Possibly, you're
Travis,
a man of God.
I don't attribute every contribution to health and wellness to God as if God did it. Um,
Okay,
I
fair
think
enough.
you're really reading in your standard of goodness into the motives of God, and that's why I'm not so confident about this stuff. I
I'm
don't think
not,
God's
yeah, sorry.
goal is to does not weigh his actions based on the health and wellness of human beings the
I
same way
didn't
that
say he
Travis
did.
does.
Yeah, I didn't say he did, and I understand. Like I'm totally like if I'm doing an internal critique, and we're talking about a truly all powerful God, and I'm talking about that God through your lens, I'm not going to claim to know what God's mind is in that scenario. That would be ridiculous. I'm just a
That's fair.
dirty, stinking ape creation of His. But what I'm saying is, if all I'm telling you is, I think there's a bit of a, you know. An incoherence between what I think you would feel about the cure for leukemia and then when we ask and I think you would be, especially if it was your child, right? If your child was the first child cured of leukemia, you would just be like,
Mhm.
this is the greatest thing that could have ever happened. You might even say it's a miracle, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying that if God just decided to edit that thing out right now and said, okay, you know what? I've seen enough of this childhood leukemia. I can't stand to watch it anymore. And he clicked delete right now.
Yeah.
And there was no more leukemia, or if it led to your child being cured, you would think that that was a good thing, right?
Well, no, if so, there would be no cure if there was no leukemia, correct? So I wouldn't have
Well,
this
I'm,
moment of real quick.
yeah,
This is important to me.
yeah.
Like, I I wouldn't have this moment of praising God for curing my child if there was nothing to cure him from. And this is the theodicy, right? It's that evil is
Well,
defeated under my worldview. So the
Isn't
fact,
that false though? Because you give God thanks for the health that you're granted, for the lack of
yeah, sure,
famine, for
I'm
the
not
lack of
eliminating that.
pestilence that you're given. You're
I'm
granted
not
because
eliminating
the
that, but
protection of
like
God.
it could be the case, and I think it is the case, that certain people would only freely choose to follow God in a world where they are confronted with horrendous evils. So God allows horrendous evils to exist in the world for those people who will only under those circumstances freely choose him. Like only being confronted with the amount of suffering or whatever X, Y, and Z situation would that person freely choose to come to God.
Okay,
I
but
want
why
to.
does it
Yeah,
matter?
sorry. Right.
Like, why does that
Well,
even
because
matter?
God's goal is not to create a world where suffering disappears, but rather a world where creatures freely choose him.
Yes, I agree. I agree
No,
with
it's
that. But
not
I'm
free.
saying, I have to say like that. I don't want to push too far past what we were talking about because I would like to still try to understand more how you make this work. Because on one hand, you're saying it would be a good thing if childhood leukemia was destroyed or cured, right? So you're saying like, yes, it's a good thing to cure this based on your lens of this phenomena now. Now, let me ask you this next step. Do you think it would be better that childhood leukemia never existed?
Not necessarily.
And how do you square that circle?
I don't think it's squaring a circle.
Okay.
So I'm hesitant on the first claim that you think I agreed to, just so you know.
Okay.
We have completely different frameworks in this. Like,
I understand.
So
Yeah.
I earlier you said, Brody, wouldn't you be so happy and appreciative? Wouldn't you prefer if your child had, been cured of leukemia or
Yes.
never had leukemia in the first place? Absolutely. I'm not a monster, of course, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're going to say, well, then, hey, Brody, you have an inconsistency because you have this worldview where you think that, there's this perfect God who let your child get leukemia. Sure. Oh, what does this show? This shows that I have an inconsistency. This doesn't show that, that this God can't exist.
No,
that's
I'm
kind of
not
where I'm
debating you.
concerned of.
I'm not debating you on the existence of God. I've already said that we can go into the internal critique where I accept all of your beliefs about God, and I'm just asking you that question from inside that world. Well, I'm not trying to debate you on the existence of God at this point, but I'm just saying that I think I think almost all moral creatures that live on planet Earth who had a child go through leukemia or have had a child struggle through cancer, I'm sure many of them have prayed to God to please eliminate this suffering from their child's body, and I'm sure many of them would say, if their child, most children die from leukemia, but if their child dies from leukemia, they would wish that leukemia was never a thing in the first place, that their child could have had fall upon them within this design, right? Yeah. So then my fundamental question is it not easy to just point at this design and say, I just think that even if not all childhood leukemia was eliminated, even one case of childhood leukemia being deleted from this grand design would be an improvement to the design. And by improvement, I just mean, that the child doesn't have to go through that suffering. Like this wasn't something that, because of their falling away from God, they got this disease. It wasn't that at all. The child, I think, is innocent of that disease in this situation. So,
can I ask you, if let's say that God were to, let's say that he were to look at all of the cases of potential child leukemia, and any one of them that was unnecessary or gratuitous, it serves no purpose, it contributes to nothing good, he eliminates. Would that be less of a problem for you?
Oh, I mean, any level of elimination of childhood leukemia, I would be thumbs up, as a moral well-being.
So what's your evidence that he hasn't already done that?
Well, I think there's still a lot of childhood leukemia. There has been a lot of childhood leukemia that has happened. And I would suspect that an all-powerful God... and sorry, just so I'm clear on your question, what's my evidence that he hasn't already removed one of those cases? I don't have evidence to demonstrate that.
Yeah, that's
I
basically
wouldn't make the claim. I'm not making the claim that God hasn't done this. And again, we're internally within your worldview right now, and I'm arguing.
Well, I know, and I'm not
it.
saying just
So,
the one case. I'm saying if he eliminated all of the unnecessary cases.
okay, yeah, and God very well might have done that. But what I'm asking you is that a good thing if God were to do that, whether he has done that or not?
I think that he has done that.
And do you think that's a good thing that he did that?
I think, like, I don't believe that there exists any example of gratuitous evil in the world. So if I do believe, and by gratuitous I mean maybe a better word would be like indefeasible, like any evil that cannot be overcome or incorporated into the greater plan of God. If I think that, like,
but I'm
any of that
critiquing the
exists,
plan. I'm critiquing that part of the plan, Brody. I'm saying that childhood leukemia, if you're an all-powerful God, isn't necessary in order to carry out this plan. It would be one less phenomena of suffering, sure. Replace, and if God had to, if it would throw off the equilibrium, replace it with some other kind of suffering for adults, let's say. So the children don't have to have leukemia. Amazing trade-off, in my opinion.
Okay. I understand that you feel that way.
Yeah, but you don't feel that way. You don't see that would be an improvement.
To me, I think, like, I have such a limited view that even if I do agree with you, it doesn't really show me anything. Like I have such
it shows me. It shows
go
me
ahead.
something. It shows me something.
Oh, okay. If all you want to hear me say is, like, I would be more, like, I have a predisposition to less kids having leukemia, then, like, absolutely. But, like, that's as far as this conversation would go for me, is just, yeah, I share your intuition. I don't like when kids get diseases,
Do you think it's indicative of more bad or more wrongful design than it really could have been?
Not necessarily.
See, I think it is because of how childhood leukemia makes me feel and how it comes into contact with my moral quest to want to maximize well-being for myself and those around me. And we're just talking, and so I do feel like, well, I guess my sense of you right now is that, you don't like childhood leukemia just like anyone else. You wouldn't want your child to have childhood leukemia. You think it's brutal and all this stuff that I feel. But when we go to critique the design of God, you seem hesitant to do that.
Well, I'm not comfortable with making the conclusion of God made a misstep or a mistake somewhere, because I just don't have enough information for that.
Right.
Why wouldn't you not be comfortable with saying the opposite?
Go ahead, CJ. Yeah.
Well, it's because, like, right now, I am a little mosquito inside of the engine of a car, and this part of the engine I'm in is getting really hot, and I'm saying I really would feel better if this wasn't so hot, but I don't know how a car works. I can't see the whole engine. Like, I don't know. All I have is this little microscopic view. So me and Travis can be the two mosquitoes that agree that this part really sucks, but without the fuller picture, I can't make a grand claim that the mechanic built this car wrong.
Yeah, but if you were a mosquito in a car, and you're like, every once in a while the world gets all hot and it gets all loud, and sometimes my buddy goes into that big spinny thing and dies. Like, maybe this was made for the betterment of me, but if you left and got out of the car, you'd be right, because it actually is a bad place. So
well, it's because cars aren't created for the purpose of housing mosquitoes, and I don't think this world is created for the purpose of making humans, avoid suffering and live through pleasure. Like, this is a brutal testing ground, and I think, like, that's the purpose of my analogy. Is you guys are under the presupposition that a God would share the same values of you. And that's
no, Brody.
You say that's not,
you keep leaning to that.
Actually, Brody, I wanted to talk to you specifically about this.
No, one second, CJ, just 2 seconds. I'm just correcting something because Brody keeps leaning back to that. Remember, what I'm curious about is whether you can make a value judgment on God's design. It's not me trying to know the mind of God and think God would agree with me that his design would be improved by one less case of childhood leukemia. It's actually me asking you, human to human, if
Yeah.
you think that that would improve God's design.
No.
So yeah,
But not
it's
even.
not the
I,
other
So,
I think
thing.
you're going a step too
like
far. Even
my reason I keep saying that is because this feature of this design is only considered a flaw under a very certain worldview. This is not considered a flaw under my worldview. This is actually just a feature of the world that is actually intentional, is that we have a world where we confront and overcome evil and suffering, and these things make us stronger. They shape our
but
character,
why?
and without that, because God doesn't want static automatons. He wants people that grow and develop virtues, and some virtues are only developed in the confrontation and overcoming of evil.
And this
Okay,
is
but
exactly what I
hang
wanted to
on.
talk about
But-
because I don't think it really matters. Like this
yeah,
is something I wanted to
yeah. Go
say for a
ahead. Go
second.
ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it really matters because I think it's kind of a backwards thing, right? Like, oh, well, the reason we have it is because this guy wants this one thing. Like, if we're talking about anyone else, if we're talking about any human or person, and we're like, oh, this guy, let's say he creates some sort of like not even horrible suffering, just like low level suffering, just like frustrates people, puts really slow cars in front of people in traffic and stuff. And he does this all day. He just inconveniences people all day. And the reason he does this is because, whenever people are inconvenienced, he can reach off them and go, hey, follow me, and all your inconveniences will be, uh, you know, given away or forgiven in, whatever world after, or in my computer video game where you can, have fun and relax. Like, I think that would be a hateful thing to do, to make society worse so that people can then, follow you to escape. It's creating the problem to then solve the problem. And I can agree with you on every single level of the facts and still go, hey, the person that's doing that, kind of hateful. Like, it's kind of legit to hate a guy whose whole thing is inconveniencing people solely because he wants them to, quote unquote, follow him under their own free will, even though he's manipulating them to follow him by inconveniencing them constantly. It's like, or at least allowing inconvenience to come to them. It's still like it's still a fucked up thing.
May I also point out, Brody, you mentioned an analogy of a mosquito inside the engine, and I think that we have to commit to the analogy. In the car is not built to house mosquitoes, as you said yourself, but then you say that God wants us to grow as a character. Where is the engine of the car has any kind of, or where is the engineer of the car has any kind of purpose for the mosquito to grow in spirit or grow in character? There's nothing like that. You can say that the God created a world that is not meant to house us, or that is not very hospitable, but when you also say that God wants to have some kind of a relationship with us, that's inconsistent with your analogy of being a mosquito inside of an engine.
Yeah, I mean, Anka, I think you point out a pretty good flaw in my analogy, and I'll be honest, I didn't think that part through very well. The reason I used the mosquito in the car analogy, kind of off the top of my head, was to show the difference in perspective between the designer of the car and an entity that only experiences one part of the design. That was kind of my purpose, was saying, regardless of if I think this is a flawed design, because I'm only seeing a very small perspective, or a limited perspective, or small portion of the design, doesn't mean that the creator, who has the bird's eye view or is able to see the whole thing, doesn't have a purpose in including it. I don't think the whole part about, obviously mosquitoes aren't meant to live in cars at all, but we are meant to live in this world, for now at least. So that part is disanalogous, and that's a good thing to point out. Who was it that was talking about God creating people just to follow him, and was that CJ?
CJ, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you put it that way, like I understand it does seem very maybe conceited. To like you're basically saying that God created a problem so that people could come to him for the solution.
Pretty
I
much.
think, yeah, and I think that
I feel like I got to jump in. I feel like that's just not coherent with the Christian narrative.
go
Well,
ahead,
I
Booby.
mean,
I've been
maybe
talking
the
a
Christian
lot.
narrative isn't coherent.
Like, a good question is,
You're breaking up a little, buddy.
all right, so God creates Adam, right? And in order to create Eve, he takes a rib from Adam, okay? And in order in this creation, he takes this rib, but he's asleep when he takes the rib. A good question is, when Adam awakes, does he experience pain?
I don't think Genesis ever implies that he does. In
I don't
fact,
think that.
this all happened before the Tree of Knowledge, which kind of implies that there was no pain or suffering or death. So I would say no.
I would largely agree. The separation between us and God created by the fall has ushered in suffering for the entirety of the human existence.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, let me try to say what you're saying so I don't argue against something that you're not saying. What I think you're saying is, okay, there was a point where there didn't need to be suffering. And then humans did this thing that God told them not to do. So don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. They did it. And as a result, suffering necessarily had to come into reality?
Consequentially, it did.
Necessarily? Or
Is suffering necessary, or is suffering a consequence of?
no,
Is it
no,
a
no.
necessary
Is it
result?
a necessary result of eating from the tree of knowledge?
Suffering is going to exist if you are separated from God in the Christian narrative.
Yeah, I just don't understand why, like, God had to be like, hey, this one tree, if you. He could have mind wiped them. He could have just said, actually, no, we're still friends. I don't understand what magical property of the fruit of knowledge
One of my
created
favorite
suffering.
aspects of suffering, and
Sure.
if you subscribe to this God creation thing, why the heck do I remember every bad thing I've ever done? Like, why do I remember the times in which I have committed immoral sins against God? Why do I remember the things that I have done that separate me from God? Because,
You probably feel bad about it.
So far. Well, why? Why should I feel bad about it? God forgives me. Why do I need to remember? Why do I still remember this stuff?
I think the reason we feel guilt and regret is a mechanism socially so that we don't do it again.
Maybe.
That's kind of what I think.
But why do I still feel an iniquity with God?
Huh?
Every Christian feels this guilt. Like this guilt with God, this distance from God. Because one of the things I've heard so far in this is like, okay, you would be thankful for the curing of childhood leukemia. Is like, but can you actually be thankful for suffering? Like, can you be grateful?
Some people can, but
Well, Paul was.
And
being grateful for suffering is
Paul says he
it's an
rejoices
ill-advised
in
value. And also the question is a little more complicated than you're painting, Booby. The difficult part is whether anyone's willing to critique anyone who believes in God, right? From a Christian perspective, are they willing to critique the aspect of childhood leukemia? And if you just say, well, I'm not willing to critique that, but because knowing God, it seems like that almost certainly would be something necessary that's in the design, because what would happen if he didn't have that in there? And I'm saying that, if God is as powerful as I believe many Christians believe God is, he could easily just eliminate the phenomena of childhood leukemia.
So,
Or
and then
even if you go even
and then if
deeper,
someone's
and I'll be
saying,
really
and
quick.
then if someone's saying, yeah, and then once I finish, and then if someone's saying,
Yeah.
I don't think God is that powerful, then fair enough. Then I guess it's outside of God's power. But I don't think that's the God most Christians believe in. I think the God most Christians believe in say that that's there as part of some kind of it's important to know suffering, to be able to overcome suffering, these kinds of things, the overcoming story. And I would say that there are almost certainly better ways God could have done that than had the potentiality of leukemia in his design. And again, yes, that's from my own, apeness looking at this problem, but I think that holds value.
And to go a little deeper on that, and I'll be really quick, I think that it's kind of odd that I'm supposed to believe that, he has all this power. He's making all these really shrewd decisions between leukemia and whatever the alternative is, and blah blah blah. But he's low diffed by a tree and a talking serpent. All of his plans and machinations for humanity are low diffed by this, and there's no way
What are you
he can
saying,
do
low
it.
dip?
L ratioed.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Yeah, I think that God absolutely had a purpose in putting the tree there, and I could even say that he put it there knowing that they were going to eat from it. That's not a problem to me.
And
I
why
don't
did
think
God,
that
Brody, why did God put leukemia there, just while we're on the topic?
So God didn't put leukemia anywhere.
In the
Can I-
design,
can I
the
ask
potentiality, one sec, Anka. The potentiality for leukemia is in the design. He put it
Yeah,
there.
that's different than putting leukemia there. He put the potentiality for leukemia there,
Yeah,
sure.
it's and what my argument is that it's evil and it's worthy of hate. Again, I don't think God exists, but it's worthy
is
of
evil?
hate. Someone who would what is evil? Catastrophic detriments to physical, mental, and social health.
According to who?
To me, as a moral agent.
Okay, so all you're saying is you disagree with this.
Yeah,
I
same
think that's kind of-
same as you as a Christian. Your adherence to God's moral standards or God's moral claims are born of your sentiments, just like my standards are born of my sentiments.
Well, when I call something evil, I'm describing a feature within the object. When you describe something as evil, you're describing your mental state.
Well, I'm describing. Yeah, I am. I'm describing my feelings. Yeah, but you think you're describing an object, but you're still only describing your feelings too.
No, I'm saying that there's a quality.
Unless you disagree
a
with
feature.
cognitive science. Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a feature that I'm identifying within the object. The same way I would say that table is red or this
I'm
ball is 40
identifying-
pounds.
I'm identifying with
there is
an
a
object.
quality called evil or disorder or whatever you want to call it. But you're describing your mental state. You're saying I have a disposition, and that's that. So that we're not saying the same
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I know you think you're describing something different, but I'm saying that from a cognitive science perspective, you and I as human beings are doing the same thing ultimately by way of our sentiments when we're making these judgments. You're making the judgments through this objective belief in an objective moral, right? By way of God. But all of that, the only reason why you maintain that belief is because you still feel as though it is righteous and good to maintain it. If you didn't feel that it was righteous and good to maintain it, you wouldn't maintain it. You would drop it.
So when I describe something as evil, right?
Yeah.
You it might be true that this comes from a feeling that I have.
I think it
that,
fundamentally does, just like me.
Yeah, the same, but you can make the same argument for any physical phenomenon, right? You can say
Yes.
that the only, there is nothing that is red about that chair. It's just a, it's a psychological thing that allows you to see red. But I'm seeing something that exists outside of myself, right? And I don't want to get into the whole like objective morality thing again, but I find it curious that you say that this is evil so confidently when you're talking about something God did, when I think we mean different things when we say evil. Like I can, like, here, Travis, here's an example. Okay, you can say that like speeding is illegal, right? That this isn't saying anything about your mental state or how you feel about speeding. It's saying that there is a law. Sure, it was a law passed by humans, but there is a law that is being broken that says this is forbidden. And I'm using
Brody,
evil in the same way. There is a divine law that is being broken. It's not just I feel negative towards it.
Yes, you do. You feel as though that law that's being broken should not be broken. These are sentiments born of the subject.
Well, and you feel that speeding is illegal, right?
Correct. No, I know that speeding. I know that speeding is illegal. So it's different, right? So when we're talking about deontological things that we're measuring to, right? You can be right or wrong about those deontological things. Like, it's a fact, for instance, that the speed limit at this part of the road is currently, 55 miles an hour. That is a fact based on that deontological rule. But you shifted categories when we were talking about the fundamental layer of what's giving a rise to our sentiments that will either agree with that deontological rule or not. But when I say evil, I'm just talking about things that are profoundly immoral based on my view of morality. So you and I would both, so I would say that it's profoundly immoral if there is a God and God created a potentiality for childhood leukemia. It's not that hard for me to get there, and I can go to child abuse, like all of the things that there's potentiality for. Like, why isn't there a physics, for example, that as soon as a child is about to be abused, that person's physics is frozen, and there is a divine signal set out to authorities, and they're able to come and save the child from the abuse. That is a way better design than what's going on right now.
Hey,
and again, it's based on my own subjective opinion, but I think it's worth something.
When you say that you calling something evil is based on your own subjective opinion,
yes,
you calling something evil is
same
based
as
on
yours.
your moral code, right? When earlier I said, hey, you're judging God by your own subjective opinion, you said, no, Brody, I'm going to stop you right there. We're not. We're interviewing your view. You're interrogating your view. No, you're not. You just admitted to it.
No.
When you call him evil, you're using your own standard.
Hang on. I never once said that I have a truly objective standard for morality.
No, you said this was an internal critique on my view.
Yeah. Well, no, that's where we were, but then you tried to step outside and step away from the question of whether you're willing to put your stake in the ground and critique God's supposed grand design. And
I answered that pretty clearly. I think I could answer it again.
And you didn't want to critique it, right?
I'm saying I don't have enough information.
Yeah, I think all the information, we can move. I want to open up the mics to other people because you and I have been going back a lot. I don't think we need any more information besides what we know about childhood leukemia. And if God's reasoning was like, well, if I take away even one case of childhood leukemia, I'm going to have to balance it out somewhere else, then I would say, yeah, balance it out somewhere else. Take it out of the child. That would even be an upgrade to the design.
What's the low traffic to leukemia ratio?
I don't view defeating evil as a balancing off. This is not how I would measure evil. I'm not saying if there is, X example of evil, God needs to add Y example of good in order to balance it out. Like, that's just not at all my framework I'm working with.
Why are children pawns in this defeating of evil game by way of childhood leukemia? That is evil, in my opinion. And again, based on my
if we're either gonna interrogate my worldview or we're gonna talk about Travis's worldview. Like,
I'm interrogating you. You told me that you're not willing to critique God's design, and I think there are obvious potentiality flaws in the design if it allows for, childhood abuse or child abuse to take place and child leukemia. Like, and you're saying you don't think that that's necessarily the case.
I think a world containing leukemia is consistent with God's desire to nurture people towards sainthood. So
Yeah, and
I
I'm
don't.
saying the way of
It's
nurturing is evil.
What?
That's what I'm saying. And it's
yeah.
and
Of course,
the
but
way of just like Jesus drowning pigs to teach a
Yeah, I know.
lesson in scripture is an evil way of teaching.
I understand you feel that way.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, I'm just expressing my feelings, and I think you are too. The difference is that your feelings are attaching you to this tradition where you think you have the object of morality, and I would consider it's a dangerous tradition because I still think it's causing you not to critique or question the the design from on high. And I think you're only viewing that through a negative utilitarianist suffering avoidance calculus lens, as opposed to the positive utilitarianist lens. Because from a positive utilitarianist lens, it's quite easy. You could appeal to God right now and say, God, I just pray, like, if you could just remove one case of childhood leukemia.
We already both agreed he could have done that.
Wait, if you could just remove the one case of childhood leukemia, the potentiality for it that hasn't happened yet, that would make me so happy. And if God did do that, that would improve what otherwise could have been a worse design playing out.
Yeah, sure. He could have done that a thousand, a million times. We don't know. And that like an interesting conversation for us to have, like at least from my perspective, is to say, Brody, you have this worldview that says that God is good and all powerful, and there's these evil examples, like things that are evil in the world, like leukemia. How can you reconcile it? Like that's an interesting conversation.
General. I think it's too general.
That's an
easier conversation for you, Brody. I think that's a much easier conversation
you
for
can
you.
say, hold on. You can say like specifics, right? You can say like, let's look at like specific cases of evil. Why did God allow those specific cases in your worldview? How can you reconcile that? But my problem with this conversation is that the person who's interrogating is importing their own standard of what they call evil, and it's really muddying the waters. Because I'm not here to defend Travis's worldview of what, like, why does God not conform to Travis's idea of good
Brody,
and evil.
Brody, I haven't asked you to do that once. I've simply been asking you to take a look at God's design, and if you can see any ways that it could be or could have been better. That's all I've been asking you. I haven't been asking you to defend based on my standards. I'm asking if you can see any good, and I feel like by some of the questions I've asked, you've agreed that some of these phenomena are bad. But then when I ask you, like, then wouldn't that make it better for that potentiality to be edited out? Like, and you say not necessarily. So I don't understand how you make that coherent in your mind.
Well, because when I say not necessarily, that like just removing X evil is because whatever, like, it could be by removing that evil or the possibility for that evil, that he is sacrificing some greater good. And since I don't have a bird's eye view and I don't know what is going to be lost in that process, that's why I say not necessarily. Like I'm not confident that this would just be like an easy decision, you know?
I don't want to keep going in circles, and I appreciate you talking to me, but I want to open up the mics to everyone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to do, and I'll try.
Okay, go ahead, CJ.
Do you have something to say? Oh
no,
I'll try to be.
Something.
Okay, go ahead. You haven't talked much.
Okay, something. Yeah.
I think that the way we understand actions of God, when we think of a God who's all-knowing and ideally in our expectations is also all-loving, is that his way of teaching us some sort of lessons is akin to an abusive parent. For example, there was a case of parents orchestrating a kidnapping of their own child to teach their child not to roam around after school or talk to strangers. It's an extreme act of abuse, and actually they were convicted for it because the damage the psychological damage that was done to the child by the parents by orchestrating this kidnapping, tying a bag over his head and taking him to like a location and pretending like he was actually kidnapped was so severe that even though the child might have learned to not talk to strangers, there is a level of abuse that we as a society can recognize as agents. We can recognize that this was over the top. And I think that when we look at God's action and the idea that he might teach us some things through suffering, I see it as a parent who is for the sake of education, is stepping into area of abuse.
Okay. Would it change your mind if it was not simply for the sake of education that God allows suffering, but if it was for additional goods?
Would
Or do
it
you think
make
that there's
you
nothing that would
ask that yourself? Would it be okay to abuse a child if there was some kind of a greater plan that we're not aware of on the side of the parents?
So I think abuse is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this. I would not use the term abuse. For example, like I would if I think that first of all, that situation that you described is absolutely abusive. I'm not arguing that. Okay? Like kidnapping your child and traumatizing them is abusive. But we're talking about like if God would allow if God, has a reason for allowing evil and suffering in the world, um if this evil and suffering that he allows in the world contributes to a greater good that would not be there without this evil and suffering, then I don't think I could call it abuse. So I don't think it's just for teaching. I don't think it's like just so we can learn things. I think that
But
there are values and virtues in the like compassion and self-control and perseverance that are known to develop in people when they are confronted with evil. And it's not surprising that God would allow evil and suffering in order to maximize these values.
well,
I just
I could
but
maybe agree with you if you had if in your possession the whole plan of God, which I don't think you have. We cannot actually know if it's for greater good because nobody possesses the exact plan that God has for humanity. So the only thing we can look at is the actual effects that we are experiencing. We cannot be, oh, well, this is going to be better for the future because we don't know that.
Well, I think
It's not
we
something
can
that anyone possess.
I think I would push back against that. I think we actually have a lot of evidence that suffering contributes to, I mean, what I'm calling like saint fostering or soul fostering, which is just the idea of like, contributing to the good of someone's character or their virtue or the overall good of their life. I think if Viktor Frankl was brought up in this call not too long ago, right, the Holocaust survivor, where he doesn't just say like, oh, like the suffering in his life was balanced, or weighed against the good in his life, but he actually goes as far as to say that the suffering he endured was necessary to the overall good in his life. And we actually have we have a lot of evidence that many people who suffer from natural disasters, torture victims, veterans, practically any tragedy you can think of are more likely to become spiritual than those who do not suffer those things. So I think
hmm.
we do have a lot of evidence.
Okay, but so your evidence for the idea that suffering leads people to follow Christ and it is being done to lead people to follow Christ is that people who are suffering tend to follow Christ. People who are in these bad scenarios tend to follow Christ. Is that the argument?
I'm not saying that suffering is used to get people to follow Christ. I'm saying that it's reasonable for me to believe that God would allow it if it is defeatable, if it is redeemable, which in many cases it is redeemable. Well, actually, in all cases it is redeemable. Just in some cases people reject that, but that's
Well,
what I'm
why
saying.
would
I'm not
God
saying
allow it at all if it did not help God's plan? right?
Be,
I'm assuming he's allowing it to some extent to help his plan.
so like there's a difference between a type and a token. So I can say that like yes, God allows the type of, like suffering as a type. Like that it is necessary that we have suffering and evil in the world in order for us to, develop these virtues, without saying that every single instance of evil, token of evil, is therefore necessary. That
Yeah,
makes
I'm okay with
sense.
saying that. I'm
Yeah.
okay with you saying that, but like, my question is, why are we assuming that the person, and let's go back to my analogy so we can remove it from God, that this person that's inconveniencing people in minor ways all the time, like, should we assume that he's doing it out of some altruistic sense to actually like improve the world? Why would our why would our first thought be, well, he must be doing it to improve things. He must be doing it to, create oh, sorry, some net good. Why is it that that's our first thought instead of, you know, asking for evidence that there's some net good? Because it's impossible. I think even the Bible says this. It's impossible for anyone to know the heart or mind of God, right? So I don't know why we're making assumptions on his actions. You can say
So
that you do it on faith,
I mean,
but
no, so like what a theodicy does is not to say I know the heart of God, but it's rather to give a potential or possible reason for why God would allow these things. So I'm not saying this is 100% the reason. I'm just saying this is a reason that can reconcile this in a meaningful way. When you say like why would, if I see somebody who's going around like poking and annoying people, why would I assume that he's doing it for a good reason? I think this is making the assumption that God is the one doing the poking, that God is the one that is handing out leukemia, or that God is the one that is
Well,
like
God
doing these
God
things
is
personally.
responsible for the potentiality of leukemia in the design. I'm talking at a more fundamental layer, like the fact that that's a potentiality within the design. For example, there's not a potentiality for like, a 42-headed snake, for all we can tell. There isn't a potentiality for a seemingly infinite amount of things. But for some reason, in God's design, he felt that it was important that childhood leukemia be a potentiality.
Yeah, so
similarly,
like
I'd also be
real quick,
pissed off.
when CJ
I'm
brings up the
sorry.
example of somebody going around annoying somebody, I think there's a meaningful difference between the question, what purpose does this kid in my playground have with poking me all the time, versus what purpose does the teacher have in allowing him to be on the playground? I think they're fundamentally different questions. I
Okay,
might,
yeah, you're
that
right.
person who's
You're
doing the
right. That is a
poking might,
flaw in
yeah, go ahead.
my analogy, so I'll fix it. Why is the government allowing X crime to happen and not punishing it? Not punishing people for that crime. There you go. They're not
Why is the
doing it, but they're
government?
allowing the circumstances for it, and they have the power to stop it. They know who's doing it, and they have the ability to put them in jail, but they're not.
Yeah, I
So
would
are
say
we going
that.
to assume that the government's doing it because, oh, we're trying to do some net good? Or are we going to say, hey, give us the evidence first and then we'll make our decision? And until then, maybe like enforce our laws.
Yeah, so this is a problem with different worldviews here. Like you got to keep in mind if you're interrogating my worldview, I do
Yeah.
believe all evil gets punished.
Yeah.
I do
Also,
believe that
CJ,
all
like,
that justice is done.
yeah, if we are doing an internal critique here, we are talking about, like XI was just saying, government is not omnipotent, omniscient, you know?
Boy, it's a hypothetical, guys.
Well, no, CJ, I'm just saying, like in my view, evil is punished. There is justice for every wrongdoing, and there is reward for good, and all that. Like this is factored in, right? This life isn't the only life that we have.
Okay. Actually, that's fair. That is something that I wasn't really considering. Now, to be fair, I would also see the way that things are punished. I don't know exactly how you see it, but I would assume I would also disagree with the way it's punished. But I'd have to know
Yeah,
what you feel on that. So
I'm not an eternal conscious torment guy, so I would probably agree with you that if somebody is burned alive and kept alive to burn for all of eternity, that's very that's that's very hard to square with a just God.
fair
Yeah,
enough.
well, someone just asked, does God ever get punished for his wrongdoings? Well, I think I'm punishing God
Yeah, he's
because,
getting a whooping from Travis right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
just
mean,
to deal with atheists all day.
I'm his I'm his creation that found good reason to fail him, and you know, some would argue that I had every good reason not to fail him, but I would say that my ethics transcended God's ethics. So I beat God in the game of ethics because I can apparently sit here without giving it too much thought and create a better design by the standard of potentiality, a more good, a more righteous design than God can.
So I think like what you are talking about, Travis, there is actually like pretty like powerful and relevant, right? Because like if you look at, you know, I think I just keep coming back to Origin's story for this discussion in my head, right? Of like, what was the first sin? Like, what was the first act that man did against God?
The apple supposedly. Or
Yeah,
for
Why?
a tiny minor disobedience.
No, but why? Why did they take the fruit? Like, what was the purpose of it? What was it promised to them by the serpent?
Well,
like life and what knowledge?
Revelation, knowledge, right?
yeah.
And it's like a really interesting thing because, like, I get what you're saying, Travis, and I get what a lot of people say. Like, being angry with God and like hating God is pretty consistent with the human experience. I would say that like there have been people with your feelings for all of our history, right? You would agree with that? Like
Yeah.
I think that
I don't
have, like,
I don't hate God though, Booby.
but based on the if you were to
I have
accept God's
critiques. I have
existence,
critiques
right?
for God the same way that I have critiques for Jordan Peterson. And I don't hate Jordan Peterson. Yeah. I think some of God's design elements are worthy of hate. Like I said earlier, like you don't have to get far, I think, to hate the idea of childhood leukemia or hate cancer. The whole fuck cancer thing. I get that, but continue. Yeah.
But how does that are you saying like I would be justified in hating God, but I am choosing not to? Or
I don't think I mean I could see people. I'd have to hear people's arguments, and that's kind of what we're doing today. I could see a justification for hating God, but I don't. In my personal view of the concept of hate, I tend to focus that energy on ideas, things that a person has done. Like I don't say I hate Hitler. I say I hate what Hitler has done. That's the way
Okay.
I think about these kinds of things.
Okay, I think that's informative for me, for you.
Can I
I
add
think
something? In the Garden of Eden, it's not only that the Adam and Eve were promised to know the difference between good and evil, but they were also promised to be like gods themselves. So the idea that they could have been closer to God was also looming in their mind, or at least Eve's mind. So you're saying that God orchestrated this separation, the separation from God that we are supposed to suffer from, but in the mind of
I don't think that
the
he
Eve,
orchestrated
it
it.
could have been an attempt to get closer, but she couldn't know better.
But she would also, but she's also like defying God because it was given the instruction of saying, "You will not eat from this tree."
Yes, but they were also kind of like children. They were created without knowing what it's like to die or to be punished for. They didn't even
Yeah.
know what's good and evil. So how could they know that it's bad to defy God? I mean, I know that this question has been it's not new. I'm not inventing anything here, but I'm just saying that If we have an agent who is all powerful that basically orchestrates this entire event from happening, why should we, as the guinea pigs of this entire experiment, not reject such a lab technician?
Which I think many people have. I think that's a common thing, right? You know, there's the people who subject themselves to God and people that reject them, right? Like that kind of where things have shaken out for all of human history. You know, I think that's where it winds up, and that comes down to like this space of free will. And I think that these are all like central questions that anybody who is seeking to be a Christian must contend with. You know, Travis used the thing earlier of like, God should answer to me, right? And like, for where I'm at, it like that causes me to recoil a little bit, right? Like, you know, that makes me a bit uncomfortable.
Why?
But to someone who is not,
why does that make you uncomfortable?
because I just follow, right? I just subject, right? Like I strive to put myself at the feet of like God, right? So like
Right.
the idea, like, right, the idea of me being like, how could you, you know, just any of that kind of stuff, that would be like a failure on my part, and a failure that I have committed myself, right? I certainly have had where I've done that.
I
right?
mean, there are so many ways that I am superior ethically to the Christian God. It's like I could sit here, you know, going through so many things, like, you know, a creation. Again, we can just focus on the children that have died of malnourishment.
Yeah.
It's like, people can apologize as much as they want around that, but to me, as a moral agent, as a moral well-beingist, my moral quest is to maximize well-being, physical, mental, and social health for myself and those around me. By those standards, when you create conscious creatures like God supposedly did, and within that design, you have all of this child abuse and all of this child disease, and just focusing on that one narrow issue, that just right off the bat, there is great evil there, something I could easily fix if I had the power of God. But I don't have that power. I have the power of just a human being, just like any other human being. So the best I can do is work to try and, you know, overcome what are apparently these awful, terrible conditions that God's shitty design put in place. So,
yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think like the kind of question becomes very existential very quick, because for me, right, I view it as like, reason why we have suffering is because we're separated from God. That separation causes inherent suffering, right? That's just there.
So I would never do
was
that.
orchestrated by God.
That one
Yeah.
right there,
Yeah,
I would
agreed.
never do that. I find that to be such a disgusting idea. It makes me sick in the pit of my stomach. That citing that we would just cite that and be like, yeah, that's just something that, you know, is the case. Disgusting idea, disgusting design.
So I guess
opinion.
like,
I agree with Booby here, though. I agree with him 100%. But if there is a God that is capable of doing, you know, the things that at least I perceive him to do, that I think Travis perceives him to be able to do, and there is a separation between us, that God is not doing the things that help us out, that could demonstrably improve well-being from our perspective, and he's not doing it, and we're suffering as a result. I do have to go to sleep real quick, so I'll make this really quick, but there's this thing called rat utopia. This scientist put a bunch of rats, I'm just going to explain for any viewers. He put a bunch of rats in a enclosure and gave them plenty of food, infinite housing, basically, well, infinite, but enough for everyone. And then slowly the rats society devolved, and despite having, massive amounts of food, and, room, they started attacking each other. There was like gay sub rats. There was, all the female rats were getting, taken captive by the male rats. It was crazy stuff. And for the first series of experiments where they didn't know what was going to happen, okay, I get it. They didn't know this was going to happen, and then they recorded it for science. But then if you know for a like 80-99% chance that this is going to happen again, and you do it again, I'd probably say that you're doing something that's really disgusting. I'm not a big fan of rats, but I don't think you should be treating them like that. And more especially if you're doing it to humans, it's an even bigger problem. And I would find that to be something that is particularly, and I'll go to what I put in the chat, it gives me a deeply rooted, emotionally responsive, extreme dislike, hostility, and aversion, which is the definition of hate. I do have to go to sleep though, so I'll stay for a couple minutes for a response if anyone wants one.
Thanks, CJ.
Sleep pasta.
So I guess like what question I would have, Travis, is like how do you contend with sort of the inherent inequity of like the human experience? Because like it does seem like after we fix childhood leukemia, there's gonna be something else, right? 100 years ago, we would be talking about cholera, right? How do you contend with just sort of this? It seems like an ever unfurling path of like suffering, right? From your position,
it's not. Now we'll step out of the my internal critique world, and I can step back into my perspective. Because you asked me a important ethical question. So the fact is, and it's amazing, beautiful fact about where humanity is right now. If you read Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker, if we educate ourselves on the most up-to-date statistical information by the standards of physical, mental, and social health, well-being levels around the planet, and we look at our tracking of that, human well-being has been climbing like a mountain in the positive direction rapidly. Basically forever. We've been heading in the right direction, and we continue to. There was a huge boom about 500 years ago, and another big boom, after World War II. We can see these massive booms in the right direction by my standards of what I think is righteous and good. So I love to be a cheerleader of that fact, and also be a player in that game the best that I can. So I invest my money and my time in things that I think are working to maximize well-being for humanity. And when I look at how other human beings are conceiving of ethics, some people are still, finding, their meaning, their ethical meaning, their moral meaning, by way of traditions. My main concern is not an epistemic concern, like, some atheists would make primary, like, what matters first is whether it's true or not. To me, what matters most is whether the way Christians are practicing their religion are causing them to thrive from a well-being perspective, or are there aspects of it that are causing them detriments to their physical, mental, and social health? And all I would ask as a moral well-beingist is that, can we at least look at those things that we can demonstrate are causing detriments to your physical, mental, and social health, and find healthier ways to engage with those aspects of your religion? That's what I'm primarily interested in. And then secondarily, of course, having epistemic battles in the war of ideas with regards to are there good sound reasons to believe in the existence of God, or the promotion of fallibilism and grafting that onto God, the character of God, like we were talking about today. Do followers feel free and fallibilistic and open to update enough so that they can look at God's design or apparent design and say, I could see, like through my own human lens, that it would be an improvement if this was in the design or this wasn't in the design. Because I think there is something important about feeling open to, not to give the pure mob boss reality, because I don't think it really grafts onto the idea of God correctly, but the idea that you can feel safe to approach your boss and say, just based on how I'm feeling right now, I just feel like it was unfair, and I think it would have been a better design if you didn't give my child leukemia. And I think that's coherent.
I think that's a very, like, just from my perspective, I think that's actually, if you were a Christian and you went to God and you were like, why did you do this? That's ultimately a very good thing to do, because you are acknowledging that God did this and that God's the only thing that can undo this or change this, right? Like, so yes, like your heart will be imperfect in how in how you give your desires for your child's health to God, right? It is part of it to give it to him, right? Like that is part of it. Just to kind of like drill down a little bit more on like I agree totally, right? Human existence has gotten better and better and better. Like I love the fact that I live in 2026, right? Like I think it's the best time.
Me too.
Alive.
Yeah.
But there still is the inequity, right? It's still present, right? It's still happening. And I have no reason to believe that it will ever cease. That it will always be there. I have my justification, and that seemed to be like some sand in your craw around that justification. What is the justification for continual, like, eternal suffering in some way, right? That as part of the human experience, we will eternally be suffering, less and less, but eternally.
I mean, so when it comes to suffering avoidance and lensing by way of suffering, I think there is some secondary utility to that, and in survival situations, we might even make this lensing primary, but I don't concern myself with suffering deontologically. It's not, suffering is just another thing that's going to happen as we pursue thriving by the standard of well-being. So, I'm not like, suffering will be eradicated by way of the positive utilitarianist pursuit. So as I am attempting, and many other people around the world are attempting to maximize physical, mental, and social health for themselves and those around them, by doing this, by acting this way, they will inevitably be minimizing suffering. There are some places where the level of physical, mental, and social health is on life support, and we ought put our focus where well-being is on life support, and humanity needs the most help. That doesn't mean we can't tackle many other issues at once, and that we can't do many things. And just so I'm very clear about this, my deontological rule. I call it my moral quest to maximize well-being for myself and those around me. By well-being, I mean physical, mental, and social health, like I've been saying. And the 6 Pangburn virtues and maxims. This is how I believe I've narrowed down to 6 important virtues and maxims that, for me, help foster wisdom in my life. And I think wisdom is very important. Wisdom is basically becoming more rational to your purposes. That's like the basic premise of what I think wisdom means and what wisdom is doing. But all of this stuff, someone will ask, well, how do you know it's ultimately good? How do you know it's ultimately righteous? Like, where's it coming from? Where are you getting this from, Travis? Well, the same place that the Christians are getting the feeling from that it's correct, righteous, and good to believe in the Bible, to believe in the Christian God, to believe in Jesus. That feeling you have that this is correct and good is the same feeling I have towards my current fallible moral standards.
It's not.
And if you want to consider yourself a man, woman, whatever, of science, and you want to learn about cognitive science, by way of cognitive science, we can demonstrate that all human beings are accepting beliefs by way of their sentiments. That same layer of feelings. And here's an example. If tomorrow the Christian woke up and for whatever reason felt differently about the proposition that the Christian God exists, in that they woke up and they were like, oh, I don't feel that proposition is true anymore. For maybe I read a book or I heard an argument or just I woke up and this is how I feel today. Then they're not going to be in a state of accepting that proposition anymore. They're going to stop believing the proposition because they now feel differently about it. So fundamentally, when it comes to beliefs, and all of my positions are based on beliefs too, they're ultimately born of our sentiments. That's my current belief about human cognition.
When you say that our beliefs are born of our sentiments,
Yes.
I can wholeheartedly agree. So when you're
Okay.
saying that
'Cause
my
it's
way
true.
of coming,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, right?
Yeah.
When you're saying that my way as a Christian of coming to my beliefs is psychologically the same way you as a non-Christian come to your beliefs,
Yes.
I wouldn't have any problem with that. But you're just talking about epistemology, how we come to believe the things we come to believe.
Well, I'm talking about belief. Epistemology is, but yeah, everything in epistemology, everything in ethics, all of it is born of our sentiments. But the thing that Christians do is they try to play a game of, yeah, but there is something more special about the propositions I accept.
Yeah,
Or some Christians will say that I presuppose God. Like if we want to get to tag or whatever tonight, we can talk presuppositionalism. But they want to say, yeah, your presupposition is just like born of how you feel, man. But mine is the ultimate presupposition
Travis,
by way of God.
The special thing is not how I came to my belief.
Okay.
It's not the epistemological question. It's the thing which I believe, the ontology of it, that's the different part. So you showing that psychologically we both arrived here at the same, on the same train, that's true. We might have taken the same train, but there's an ontological difference of the destination we've landed up in. That's the difference. You're saying that
you just, I don't know why you're using ontology here. Can you try to
when I'm
make
saying
that work?
ontology,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the way or the nature of the thing itself. The thing that we're both observing in this case.
Sorry,
is
I know what
morality.
ontology is, but I'm curious as to why you brought up different ontologies here.
Because I believe there's an ontological difference in what you call a moral standard and what I call a moral standard.
And can you tell me that ontological difference?
Yeah, your moral standard is subjective and mine is objective.
So I know and I believe you believe that. I'm
Yeah.
not questioning your belief, but my next question after that is to show me the object of moral deliberation.
Moral deliberation is the subjective portion, right? The same way that vision is subjective.
Moral deliberation also includes what metric you're measuring from. So I'm asking you
Yeah, but
for the objective.
that's still
I'm asking.
epistemology.
No. But so you just said you have objective morality, right?
I'm saying that what I believe in is objective morality.
Okay.
What you believe in is subjective morality. We might believe by the same epistemological standard, but that we're believing in different things is my point.
I'm simply asking you for the object. So that thing that you were calling objective, I'm asking you for a demonstration of that object. So I assume you would hand me the Bible, right?
No.
Okay,
I
what
think
would you
the
hand
Bible
me?
the Bible might be a tool that we use to outline or recognize what is evil and what is good. The same way that glasses might be a tool that helps us see accurately, but it still is not the object.
Okay, what's the object?
The object is the actual praiseworthiness or blameworthiness of an action. It's the goodness or evil that's within
not an
an
object.
action or a character.
That's not an object.
Well, are you using object in like a linguistic sense or like
Say that again. The
object?
blameworthiness or praiseworthiness of something.
That's what I mean by that's what I mean by
those
morality.
are evaluative properties that call for things like intentionality. So these are going to be subjective moral preferences. Why do you think there's anything objective about it?
Well, I disagree. I don't know why you would say that those are subjective. I think that we might have our own subjective opinions or viewpoints about what is morally praiseworthy or blameworthy.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that the same way that I would, in the language that you've used in this very call, you'll say that this is evil. The same way that you'll identify any other quality about an object, like this is red, this is, you're not saying I dislike this. You're saying that there is this quality. That's what I believe.
No, I'm saying this particular thing, like when I was talking about childhood leukemia as part of a design potentiality, I'm saying that is evil. And if you ask me, what do you mean by that? I of course tell you based on my subjective moral preferences.
So this is a good example, right? When you say that your morals are superior to God's,
yes,
which you've said a couple times so far,
yes,
and superior is like something that operates using a standard. You're saying like it is above on this standard, and I say, well, what is the standard that it's superior on? And you say, well, my personal preferences. This sounds to me like you're,
of well-being.
This is like if I were to say, guys, I got first place in a lookalike contest, and the goal was to look like Brody. Well, of course, I'm going to win first place on my own standard. Travis, you win first. You beat God at appealing to your standard.
Well, that's not the reason why I make that claim that my ethics are superior to God's. It's because I really care about winning the battle, the war of ideas in ethics against the Christian God because of my superior ethic. It's not just so I can sleep at night and feel superior. It's because I know that Christianity, for example, in how it affects its members would be drastically improved if Christian ethics were actually determined and measured to physical, mental, and social health outcomes, which a lot of like armchair Christians do anyway. It's hard for us not to engage in well-being calculus. So it's not about just me like, oh, I win because I get to state all the rules. Ha ha ha. No, I'm willing to put my flag out there and show how my ethics are superior to Christian ethics. And
I know
I
you're
think
not
I've already
doing it.
done that. And I think I've already done that tonight by showing how I would improve on God's design by just changing one itty bitty little thing in the edit.
Yeah, I know you're not just doing it for kicks and giggles. I know you don't come off to me as a prideful person who just wants to be right. Like I understand you actually care about well-being, and by your standard of well-being, you have some improvements that you would make, right? My point is just, it seems like a tautology to say that your view is superior when the standard where you're using is your view. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not tautological. So it's better viewed as like there are facts about well-being. Do you agree with that, Brody? There are facts about physical, mental, and social health?
One of the facts is not that well-being should be our standard, though.
No.
That's
Of course
your
not.
assumption.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. Yeah. I would never argue that. But yeah. But I'm saying like, well, I don't know why you said that, considering I've been telling you
Well,
it's
because
my own
that's what I'm
subjective
getting at.
preference
That's
all
my
night.
objection. So if we're not getting at that, then we're not actually getting at my objection.
Well, I was going to tell you by another way that my system is superior to God's supposed ethical system, in that there are facts about well-being, physical, mental, and social health, and that we can measure to those facts to determine whether we are doing good or bad. And one of the presuppositions that leads that it's a presupposition I know you're going to accept, that health is preferential to sickness. Do you accept that?
Preferential as in I would prefer it?
Do you think health is do you think health is preferential to sickness?
I prefer it.
I'm asking you. Yeah. Most human beings that have ever existed, actually more so, like I used to use the presupposition life is preferential to death, but that's not near as good.
It's not always the case.
It's not near as good as the presupposition that health is preferential to sickness. You're going to be hard pressed to find any human being that has ever lived that would prefer sickness as opposed to life, like actually as a preference. Not that they would prefer to keep drinking alcohol or doing drugs or something, even though it's making them sick. Like they would have, their reasons for wanting to do that, but they would prefer that they would be able to keep doing drugs and alcohol and that it wouldn't make them sick, that they would be able to stay healthy while doing that. So I'm saying that almost all human beings will accept that health is preferential to sickness. And then we build this model of well-being that deals with the health phenomena, which is physical, mental, and social health. It's important to make these things explicit. And there are facts about these categories that we can hold each other accountable to, that we can look at and say, where do we need more improvement when we're interested in maximizing these things? Because ultimately, we are pulling from that presupposition that everybody wants to be healthier instead of sick. Now, and then someone would say, well, then Travis, fundamentally, why does that presupposition matter? That's what the presuppositionalist is going to ask. And I'm going to say, because I feel it deeply and strongly in my sentiments that my health and other people's health matters. And then a lot of people say, okay, Travis, you just admitted it's your feelings. And then I would say, yes, we can't escape this. Just like you agreed, Brody.
I see what the problem is.
That your psychology and your cognition operates the same as mine. We're doing the same game, except my standards has metrics that we can measure to satisfy a fundamental presupposition that health is preferential to sickness.
I see so when you hear a presuppositionalist ask, why does it matter? You think they're asking, why does it matter to you? Which is why your answer makes sense. You'd say, well, it matters to me the same way that you following God matters to you. But that's not actually
It's not only that. It's not only that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would posit to the presuppositionalists that for that reason I already laid out to you, that almost every human being, essentially all human beings of sound mind are going to agree that health is preferential to sickness. So it's not just for me. It's something I identify what other people want, and that I have an empathetic feeling within me to want to give it to them. So that gives rise to my deontological moral quest to maximize well-being for myself and those around me.
Yeah,
So it's
I
not
don't
just, I think you thought you found the golden calf there, but it's
well,
not, it's
all
not
you did was
just
just
for me.
expand it. You just expanded it, right? You're just saying, well, it's I still feel like you're missing the presuppositionalist. When they say why does it matter,
Yeah.
they don't mean why do people care about it? Like why does a majority of people, like why does it matter to
Well, it
X
matters
subject?
because it matters because people feel strongly about it.
Yeah, and that's the difference, right? I think like
Yeah,
I
but
think
Brody,
that
you're trying to say no, Travis, you're missing it. I mean, I've been doing this
Literally,
for
the only
many
source of
many
anything
years.
mattering
Yeah.
is people's testimony.
Yeah, and that's what I would fundamentally disagree with. Like that's where we're missing each other. And I think
Okay,
like
provide something other than
like,
a person's testimony.
I think this has like been super beneficial, like at least like productive at least to me, because I think like this is the crux of this whole disagreement.
Okay, what's
like
the crux? Can you state it, and then we'll deal with it.
Yeah, under your worldview, the reason why certain values or preferences, I won't say that. The reason why like well-being matters is because of the stance that humankind takes towards it. We prefer well-being. That's our stance.
Yes.
And since I know that I prefer well-being and most people prefer, health over sickness, that's why it matters. When the presuppositionalist says that something matters, they mean it in an objective sense, meaning even if every person in the world disagreed with this, it would still matter.
I've had conversations with all the top presups on the planet, basically, and I've got to their lots, and they're going to say, "Well, I'm meaning, I need some kind of objective mattering," and I tell them time and time again, I'm sorry, but it's never been demonstrated that such a thing exists. There's a reason why there's the Humean gap here. There's a gap between the is and ought. What we're trying to find this ultimate solid grounding, oftentimes, well, in every case, to satisfy our sentiments. We think it's the good and righteous thing to be pursuing this ultimate grounding, which is kind of humorous to me. But when someone presupposes that is there, or that you have that, or that you can find it, I think it's simply an epistemic error that they think they've found it.
Yeah, I think if you were to go off, go ahead. We can move on to someone else.
I want to bring Brett in. Let's go around the room, because you and I have been going back and forth for a bit. And by the way, Brody, I love having conversations with you. Thank you.
Me too, man.
Yeah.
If I was following there correctly, the way I would see it is, like, it is, I don't know if you would use the word objective, because obviously Trav laid out the point of why it might not be so. But like, shelter for all humans around the world is a need they have. And the need is, the explanation is self-sufficient. Whereas if you turn that to a meaning of, one religion, about like, the need for understanding an afterlife or earning an afterlife in a sectarian or denominational way, and you basically have it where humans will try to justify their one group, theirs, is correct, and the others are incorrect. And a person might further go down to say, well, that's because there has to be something objective. People are looking for an objective belief or whatnot, but it's not demonstratable that there is, for example, an afterlife, and that working towards it is something that humans actually need. Whereas shelter, food, etc., very tangible things are very provable. And you're not going to say to the kid dying in Africa, in many parts of the world where there's a food, gap or famine, right? The thing that they really need is religion. It's like, no, the person needs food, and they need shelter, and they need adequate provisions, and we should try our best to help others in need, just because the goodness is within it to see well-being. I don't know if I explained that well enough, and I'll stop there
Well,
because there's
I
also
mean,
other
what
people.
what would you say to the person on their deathbed, who is desperately seeking just some sort of hope? Would you just say well, we've given you all of your physical needs, and this is all you need. You don't really need any more than that.
The way that energy, and this is where, Thomas or Trav or any other person could correct me on, given modern science or other point there, I would first of all let them know that they're not alone, being there with them, that to be comforted, and also that, it is something that obviously is beyond description because we haven't been there and really been back, but that, in a way, if our physical body and everything else that we know about literally is returning to the earth, there is some energy field we go into. And it was just basically like before we were born. And that, the fear, how you're obviously going there. I think for some, they still won't accept that. But for me, it's it's actually a quite peaceful thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's a one-all to win-all.
Sure. I hear you, man. I think it is a lot easier to say that, there are these clear things that human beings need, and it's a little more difficult for me to say, I can't demonstrate you need salvation. I can't prove that empirically, but it's very easy to prove that you need food or that you need water. And if people are without houses and without food and clothing, it seems like a way more pressing need to get them those things than to get them more Jesus, which is we're not really sure if, all these religious claims exist, right? Or if they track truth or whatever. I hear that. I think that's a fair argument. I think that the presupposition you're operating under, and what it sounds like a lot of you are operating under, is that there is a goodness to well-being or a goodness to flourishment. And you'd probably just say that, the goodness is just that we prefer it and we need it. I prefer to be healthy, and I need to be healthy in order to survive. It's pretty clear and cut. I think I'm trying to get a deeper question, is it good, capital G good for human beings to survive?
So this is where, again, I don't want to make it a dialogue here because, like Travis said, there's other people in the room. I do have a response to that. I don't want to make sure I'm being aware of mic time. So is there anyone else that wants to go?
Well, I do have something to say, but you can finish your.
Brett, finish your shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just basically that this is. It is exemplified by the interaction between the people, the beneficial of both. If it is sectarian or denomination, then that leads to separation amongst people. And that, the action of going to help someone for yourself to obtain shelter because the world's brutal, right? And helping others. That one is obviously harder to show because there's a limit for it that people, do or whatnot. But if we actually want a better world for our kids that doesn't descend into chaos and war, and we actually have to care about it for not only our kids, but also our neighbors' kids and the kids all the way around the world who we don't know, but it's one planet. That's good for me. That's good enough. It's not always perfect, and I'm not always perfect in it, admittedly, but it just is.
Okay.
I'll stop there.
I actually wanted to talk to you about the fall, Brody, if you wanted to do that.
I'd be interested in a second.
Yeah,
I didn't want to move off of this too quickly.
Sure. I want to talk about the fall, so talk to somebody like
like aiming at.
Yeah, so like, what do you guys think about? You've probably heard this objection before, but like, if our idea of good and evil is synonymous with well-being or not well-being, or like pain or health, or like all these, like, is what do you do with the fact that there seems to be, like, if I imagine a scale of well-being on one side and like utter complete suffering on another side, there seems to be what I think we'd all agree with as very good people on both sides and very wicked people on both sides of that well-being scale. So it seems like there's a different metric that we're using to call them good and evil besides just well-being if they exist on both sides of the scale. You know what I mean?
I think I'm following that. Could you restate?
Yeah. Sam Harris like gives this caveat at the end of the moral landscape where he acknowledges that that there, even though there are objective things that lead to well-being and objective things that lead to harm, in human beings, it seems that if we were to look at this, like if you have like a scale in front of you or like a line, and on one end is complete total well-being and health and all of that, and the other end is like complete suffering and impoverishment and all that. Seems like there are good and bad people don't fall on that scale the way that the well-beingists would assume. Unless I'm like really misunderstanding you guys. It seems
why-
like there's good people that really have a life full of suffering, and there's really wicked people that have a life full of well-being.
Why should we expect for good things to happen to good people?
Well, if that's our standard of what good and evil is well-being, I guess this is just pointing out that you guys probably use a different standard when you're judging vices and virtues.
No, but it doesn't follow that people who are full of vice actually have bad outcomes, or the people who are full of virtue actually have good outcomes. That's disconnected.
So it's not the well-being that they experience that makes them like good. It's just the well-being they contribute to, or something like that.
Yes, it's people's acts, not not like the circumstances of their lives.
I got that. That cleared it up. All right.
Yep.
Bad people can absolutely live good lives if their manipulation negotiation are put in check. So okay, when you say good life, you don't mean morally good. I think that's like the confusion I'm getting.
Yeah, so a person can be morally bad, but they can enjoy health and well-being for themselves.
So I would not call that the good life, but like under some standard like of well-being, it is like a good life, but they're just not like, it's not like a morally good life.
You're just using two definitions of good at the same time, and it's confusing you.
Well, I think that's like my problem with conflating moral goodness with well-being.
Well, why are you combining them in this context?
Because whenever I bring up like moral goods and bads, it's like, well, I just do it according to well-being.
Well, wanting well-being and understanding what a moral good within somebody with well-being would be entirely different, rightly. So, I want well-being for a pedophile who has maybe or maybe not touched a child. We're unsure about it, but I want well-being for them in the terms of them getting rehabilitated to the point where they can be put in society again and not worry about touching another child. I'm worried about the well-being of them in that way.
Yeah, just like promoting well-being and enjoying your own well-being are just not connected things.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it is morally good to promote well-being, but whether or not somebody is enjoying or is being well in and of themselves is a separate matter.
That works.
Got it. I mean, that cleared that up for me. Thank you for explaining that.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love.
Did anyone have any other thoughts on this, or do we want to go on to the question that?
Well, I'm legitimately just waiting for the fall stuff. So if I'm totally willing to hear everybody out before we get there.
I had something I had taken notes about, so
No, yeah, get in there, Robin. I want to attack the fall stuff. I'm not going to forget. So go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll write it. I took notes. Um, I came in kind of late because I was like modding on YouTube, but I think that if we go back to look at like how we came to like our positions is real important. I grew up a Christian. I was I did not consider myself an atheist till I was 50 years old. I became a Christian at a young age uh, because of like my parents telling me that Christianity was true, and all the people that live around me saying that Christianity was true, and evolution has provided us with that, like to believe our parents because that's necessary for us to survive as children.
Mm.
So I did not come to the belief in Christianity through any method that is epistemologically sound reasoning. And so my lack of belief, though, I did come to through that method. I don't hate God. I don't want to just necessarily sin. I came to my lack of belief through rigor in like studying like these claims and studying the scientific claims about the world and using reasoning and logic. And so I think that is like, so once you are presupposing that Christianity is true, then you're presupposing that the objective morality stuff exists based on that. So you have your basis is on two presuppositions, where mine doesn't require any presuppositions. It requires no presupposition, because anything that I believe about God, I believe about God based on evidence or a lack of evidence, or logic and reasoning and things like that. So, like, I think to appeal to something beyond this life as something that we should worry about and not do anything about the actual well-being of the people on this planet is to just add another presupposition to your pile. And I don't think that anybody is justified in adding any of those. I mean, I understand why children and people believe in Christianity. I do. I believe because I've believed in it myself for a long time, and I understand it seems normal to us, especially in the United States. If we lived in a different country, it would seem normal to be Muslims or Hindus, and I just don't think that any of the people that accept these religious claims ever actually honestly go back and look at why they believe these, and they don't evaluate that, so that then they throw these presuppositions on other people, like and so then you're making claims about just on top of claims, and I don't think you're justified in doing that, Brody. I'm sorry, but I don't.
Are you thank you for sharing, by the way. Are you including me in that group when you said you don't think I'm justified in doing that? Like, you don't think you're including me in the group that just like believe because their parents believe and stuff like that?
Well, I don't know what your personal reasons are for believing, and do know people have their own personal experience. But I think that oftentimes I've heard a lot of experiences, and even though I cannot tell you that your experience is not correct, I can tell you that what we have learned through study about the experiences that people claim, that often there are other things like human psychology, just like a fear of death. We've studied all this to where we know a lot of the reasons why people will accept an experience as grounding, as reason to believe, and that might be reason enough for you to believe, but it's not reason enough for you to think anybody else should believe.
Got it.
I just wanted to say that I was listening as I was walking away. Thank you guys. Everything's been so great tonight. I just wanted to clear up the consequentialist and deontological issue I was hearing. So just to clear it up, when it comes to well-being as a moral metric, physical, mental, and social health, there's the consequentialist, the outcome measurements and what we would consider to be good based on the consequences of actions, and measuring those consequences by physical, mental, and social health standards. But then there's the deontological aspect. That is where my moral quest sits. That is where I can tell by my standards if someone is living the good life or not, because someone brought up the good life. So to me, for someone to be living the good life, they are actively trying to maximize well-being for themselves and those around them. Now, this can be, it doesn't mean that they have to make that explicit, but what they are trying to do, if they are trying to cause detriment to physical, mental, and social health to people, that would be a bad thing. Sometimes that can be made righteous, like in times of war. If they are, making a discernible effort and trying to maximize well-being, physical, mental, and social health for themselves and those around them, I think they are living a good and righteous life. And again, there are situations like in self-defense situations, if someone has to defend themselves and throw a punch or something like that, this would still be a bad thing that has happened, but it can be made righteous if the reasons are for the preservation and the attempted preservation of being able to maximize well-being. So it's important to understand not just the consequentialist layer, because then people will start straw manning my position and engage in some kind of simple consequentialist well-being scenarios. But I think where most moral well-beingists fail is thinking they don't have to deal with the deontological rule, which I think they need to in order for moral well-beingism to be coherent.
Thanks for that clarification, Travis.
Mm-hmm. We have about 15 minutes left on the live show. Is there anything anyone wanted to address with Brody, or Brody, anything you wanted to address? Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? I don't think we've had any atheists. I'm not sure if we've had any atheists claim that they themselves hate God tonight. It's a common question that I see come up. I see a lot of video content made by religious people on, why do atheists hate God? I don't really.
Can I comment on that actually? Do you mind? Do you mind if I comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. So, people like to talk about when we hate on God or anything like that, as if we're, as an atheist, hating on a concept that's not real, and that's kind of entirely fair. But when I'm talking about if I'm hating on a God, as far as a concept, I'm not hating on a God. I'm hating on the people who authored the God. I hate the hate that I have doesn't come to the actual deity that exists or the ideas that the deity has. It comes from the people who conceptualize the deity. The hate and the energy that I put towards it are the people that decided that deity needed to be a figure. I don't hate upon the fictional being that exists. I hate upon the people that rose the fictional idea to existence.
Fair enough. Do you hate those people, they themselves, or do you hate that they did that? Do you delineate between those
I
two
can't
things?
imagine that I hate them themselves, as they live probably an entirely different kind of lifestyle that I could ever imagine. But I do hate that they put that ideology out there. That I hate that their thought processes led to the ideology.
Yeah, I also hate the things within Christianity that were written that were things that quite obviously seek to detriment human well-being at some level. We can look at obvious things of how
many things. Yeah.
How Scripture has shaped many people's negative opinions of homosexuals, or people who are different in some kind of way, in a sexual orientation way throughout history. And I think that's
Sure.
that's a bad thing. And that's all I have to say about it. I've said enough.
No, it's entirely fair. To feel the way it's that I don't hate that people feel a particular way about their religion. I hate that they were indoctrinated and taught that way about their religion. I can't be mad at somebody for coming up in a certain circumstance, but I can hate that their circumstance led them to coming up that way.
Yeah. I do hate the idea of there's like this way of curing death anxiety a bit. Let's say if you don't believe in hell, but the fear
Sure.
of hell has been used to abuse a lot of people throughout human history, and that's an idea I hate as well.
With that, yeah. I'm also not okay with
It's
that.
wrong.
What's that, Brody?
Said it's only abuse if it's false.
That's I think you're right about that. And that's why when I see and I think it's almost certainly false. That's why I disagree with the pressure and the abuse.
Sure.
But yeah, I totally do get it, that if someone actually believes that those who are not saved by Christ or saved by way of Christ before they die, that they actually have a pit of fire awaiting them. I mean, I see that as good enough reason to stand up, to rise up against God and to try to transcend God's ethic, if that is in fact
We already
the
have.
ethic. And I feel like
we already
like
have
humanity has.
A well-being ethic all by itself has already defeated the Christian ethic by a margin, by a grand margin. A well-being ethic all by itself has already defeated that.
On the standard of well-being.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Brody. It's an amazing thing. It's a simple deontological moral quest that I think actually, because we are physical beings in a physical world, and because how we feel about our experience is directly related to our physical, mental, and social health, I think it was inevitable that eventually human beings would come to the kind of moral calculus I'm engaging in. And I think the only reason why Christianity has stuck around for as long as it has is because there are a lot of things about Christianity and the way Christianity is practiced that actually does help maximize physical, mental, and social health for people. So that's
There are specific
Sure,
things.
or people don't share your presupposition that we're just physical beings in a physical world and that there's a life after this life, in which case I'm the moral well-beingist and you guys are dooming all these people to hell, It just kind of matters who has the facts right.
Yeah, it's true if you're right.
Well,
but Marshall,
the facts...
but Marshall Applewhite of the Heaven's Gate cult also thought that he was the only one that was right, and that the only way to leave Earth with him was with him by way of S-aside. I'm saying that for the
So
YouTube
what you said
algorithm.
earlier, if somebody believes that they're doing something good, that matters more to you than like that. You would applaud that because he's doing what he believes is contributing to well-being, right?
No.
Within
No.
within the well-being metric.
Brody. Hang on, Brody. So
There's
remember
a
when I
well-being
told you
metric
there are
that needs to be...
facts? Yeah, there are facts about physical, mental, and social health. But based on those facts, we can measure this situation and know that Marshall Applewhite was isolating people away from their families, and giving them a pseudo say, oh, you can leave whenever you want. But this is what happens with cults. They have tricky ways of isolating people. He was stifling their nutrition. He was causing great detriments to the mental health of the people that were surrounding him. There were people around him who were in serious need of mental health care, and this can be derived from all of the leftover video footage we have of the people involved. He was depriving them of that and telling them that they didn't need mental health care. This is just the kinds of evils that society will push on you because they want you to live in the disgusting human way that human beings have come accustomed to living in. Like, there was all of this horrible stuff. So I don't give a rat's ass if someone thinks they're doing best for their well-being or for other people's well-being. What I care about is, what do the results show? The physical, mental, and social health facts.
Yeah.
What do they show?
That's more like what I thought you believed. And like, earlier you did
but
say
I've explained this to you. I've explained this to you, Brody, like 7 times tonight. We can go back
Travis,
in the tape.
I know. I'm just, if we go back into the tape, there was a point where you said something about how you did give a rat's ass about what people thought they were contributing to.
Well, look, when I'm saying I don't give a rat's ass, I think it's a great sentiment when people say, "Yeah, Travis, I'm all for maximizing well-being too. I'm out there with you." Then I'm going to be like, "Yeah, right on, awesome." But
so do you think it's a good thing that they spread the gospel?
Upon measurement, just one sec, let me finish my answer. But if I come to realize that they are actually like bullying people and like murdering people or like causing people to commit ecocide, being manipulative, acting narcissistically towards others, manipulating people, all of these things, then they are not living up to my deontological standards of maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you. Again, there are facts about well-being, and I'm interested primarily at the end of the day, if someone says, I've done all of this great well-being, I'm interested in those consequentialist outcomes to measure to the deontological moral quest. And what was your follow-up question?
No,
Brody?
I think you answered it.
Oh, about the do I think you are virtuous in spreading the gospel?
Like, if I actually believe that I'm contributing to people's well-being, and this is my life's goal, is to, save people from a hell that I think exists, because I'm so misled.
Yeah, I would say it depends the way you're going about it. So just like any other Christian, it depends if you are causing if you are by the way you are spreading the gospel, are you actually maximizing physical, mental, and social health for people? And if your answer is, yeah, I think for the most part I am. Sometimes I come across people where I say this to them and it causes them like anger and frustration and they storm off and they don't like hearing it. That's fine. That happens with my worldview as well. That's just part of the war of ideas. So like, you're out there engaging in the war of ideas. I would say that I hope your ideas are the kinds of ideas that are seeking to maximize physical, mental, and social health for people. And I would hope that you're engaging in the war of ideas in at least a good faith, helpful way, like you do here on Pangburn almost every night.
Oh, thanks, Travis.
I agree. I just want to point out, like, because Brody made the suggestion that we have presuppositions about. I don't presuppose that nothing exists except the physical world. Like, it may exist. I just don't accept the claims of existence based on the evidence. So not presupposing that something does not exist and lacking a belief in its existence because there's no evidence to support it are two different things.
Yes.
And because like Travis says, I'm infallible. So and even science says that there's certain things that we cannot be 100% certain about. So
there's nothing we can be. Yeah.
I can't be certain about whether a God exists or whether an afterlife exists. I cannot be certain about that. I will never have that certainty. But to also turn around and claim that I know it exists is the presupposition when the evidence is so lacking in actuality. I mean, it's so it's not a presupposition to believe in the physical world because we know it exists. And outside of solipsism, And surely you don't want to go there. I think we all can say that we all exist. Like, I exist, and I think Travis thinks I exist, and I think Travis exists. And so the physical world
Correct.
is demonstrable. That anything that you're claiming, though, about the afterlife or a God doesn't seem to be demonstrable. And so, like, I just don't think that you have justification to assert the existence of those things without any kind of supporting evidence that is demonstrable, that gives you sufficient reason to believe something.
All right, I think Benson's got his hand up.
Well,
Thanks for sharing.
can I
Jack,
talk
did you want
with?
to go? I've been waiting.
Yeah, can I talk with Brody about the fall real quick? I mean, it's okay if we don't get to it. We can talk to.
Before we do that, Jack, let's let Brett say something. I think it was in response to what was being
That's
said,
entirely
and then
fair.
we'll go to
Yeah,
the
my bad.
fall. Then we'll go to the fall.
Sorry, my fault.
Yeah, no worries.
One of my issues, Brody, is that the evidence I see is that people will often look at history and they will say that religious groups or whatnot, depending on what sect or denomination they are, they'll say that the pain caused by some humans to other humans was not actually the religion. So there's a continuous no true Scotsman fallacy. And that is not helping well-being, because in the terms of something like history, you have to look at actual events that we can prove about how groups have interacted with one another, the well-being that Travis talking about, who has it spurred well-being for basic necessities and other things, like for Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But part of the issue is that people will tribalize very quickly, psychology or whatever other reason, to say, once again, my denomination is correct, the other is wrong. I just see that as a cycle that we have to address, because that perpetual warfare amongst the species is still going on right now. It's not just religious based, admittedly. And the other thing I'll say too is that, it's one thing if you're going to talk to another person about concern about the afterlife and stuff. That in the United States, I don't know about other countries, there are parents at times and elders who judge younger people because of various changes and whatnot that are not based on good standards. Throwing their kid out of their house for their religion because of X, Y, and Z. When all science and other items say that, the kid is not doing anything wrong, in some regard. So for me, the well-being thing is that it has to be in just treating other people good, but that's not sectarian. That's a very, I do that with other people regardless of who they are. And I don't do it also for ticket to afterlife that has no real evidence from my perspective. I do it because it's right. If that makes sense. I feel it's right. Like Travis
it feels
said before.
good. It feels good, right? It's like, I think that's the thing that got us to where we are now as a species. And I'm not saying that that religions haven't assisted in some regards, but we did go over the in one of our episodes whether Christianity has been a net positive or net negative. My belief now, after doing the deep dive assessment during that show, is Christianity, all in all, has been a net negative ethically and a net negative epistemically. That's where I'm currently at with that belief. I believed before doing the show that it was probably a net positive from an ethics standpoint, from my ethics standpoint, well-being. Brody, a good way to think about this when it comes to me is that I see well-being outcomes and the deontology of my moral quest as a necessary constraint on ethics. And what I mean by that is, like, the thing at the end of the day that we are going to be measuring whether or not Christianity's doing good, Islam's doing good, Hinduism's doing good, Buddhism's doing good, is how its effect on people's physical, mental, and social health, and that also includes spiritual effect, because the spiritual effect affects our physical, mental, and social health. It's not outside of that. Any other comments? Let's let Jack get into the fall. We got some time to do the fall here.
What's it up, Brody? Hello?
Hey.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you what are your thoughts about the fall?
Well, the fall is what it's what brought sin into the world. It's what brought death into the world.
Right. Sure.
And it's you kind of might have to ask a more specific question.
I'm asking essentially, when you think about the fall, do you come at it from an Abrahamic perspective?
I mean, I hold to an Abrahamic religion, so probably yes.
Okay, that's fair. What I want to ask about the fall, when it comes to this particular case, is Adam and Eve coming into the Garden of Eden, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were told by God, right, that they have free reign of the garden and they are to have dominion over all animals, and that they are not to eat from this particular tree, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When they are told from not to eat from this particular tree, do they have the understanding of good and evil when they are told that?
Yeah, it's a good question. They have an understanding of ought and ought not. I don't think they have an experiential understanding or a knowledge in that
of good and evil.
Evil yet, because they have not experienced evil. Yeah.
Sure. So let's get to a little bit further into the story, right? We have the serpent coming to them, coming to Eve. And at first she resists, right? She says no at first.
Okay.
And then, upon given knowledge about what she has been told, hey, you will not actually die upon eating this fruit. You will not, you and your, this has been a lie that has been told to you by God. And the only two information outputs that Eve has ever had are from God, without the understanding of good or evil, that you should not eat from this tree. And one input coming from not God, that is the information that you have been told is a lie, and that eating from this tree will not kill you. On this day, it's very specific on this day. Now, not understanding good or evil, the fruit is plucked and eaten. In the Bible, it is said that if they eat the fruit, they would have knowledge like us, like good and evil, like God and other things. If they didn't know that eating from the fruit would be good or evil, why are they punished?
Yeah, this is a pretty common objection. I think, and it's a good one. I'm not just saying that to brush it away. Like, I think it's a fair objection. I think that the Old Testament uses this word "no" in a very particular way that we don't typically use the word "no," and it's one of these translation things that I think a Hebrew reader would really understand better. Because that same word "no" is used when it says Adam knew his wife and she conceived. Well, he had knowledge already of her, but he hadn't, intimately experienced her, if you will. And I think the same is true for evil. I have no reason to believe that they were unaware of the right choice or the wrong choice, but it is
Well,
clear
they
that they
didn't
hadn't
have.
experienced it yet.
Well, they know that good and evil is only capable of being experienced after eating the fruit. They are not capable of knowing good or evil beforehand. Therefore, when Eve eats the fruit of knowledge of good or evil, she can see that based upon the subjective good or evil, that she has done quote unquote evil by eating the fruit. However, knowledge beforehand does not exist. Therefore, Eve eats the fruit out of a conflicted understanding of reality between two entities, and not knowing good or evil, decides that one of them, based upon the knowledge that has been given, is not telling the truth, and therefore eats the apple or the fruit that is forbidden, and that allows them to know the knowledge of good or evil. And essentially, what I'm getting at is, how can these people be brought to bear for things that someone ultimately knew they would do, that they didn't believe had any true consequences because good or evil hadn't been bestowed upon them?
Yeah, so I do believe that Adam and Eve had all of the sufficient knowledge they needed to make this decision. I don't think that they were weighing, and I understand that that's your critique. I'm just saying, like, this is where I'm disagreeing. We can talk about why did God put them in
Sure,
this
get into it.
situation,
Yeah.
but that's a different question. I think the part you mentioned about them being given dominion over creatures is like vitally important to this question. That assumes that they had knowledge of what is creature and what is creator. They did not name God. They recognized God is creator, this is creature. They would have recognized that serpent here is creature. And what do we have over creature is dominion.
I disagree, and the only reason I disagree on that point is
Okay.
because there has been no mention of a creature that can communicate with them other than this serpent.
Well, that's just an argument from silence, right? We don't know whether or not these other creatures could communicate with them.
Well, the problem is that we have evidence for one, but not for any other.
Yeah, and that's an argument from silence. You're
It's
saying
left.
we have no evidence that other
Well,
creatures
no,
spoke, so you're drawing a conclusion that this is the only one that they knew of that could speak.
well, it's more along the lines of that's the biblical narrative. It's
Not
less about
necessarily.
that these no. It is these other animals may have had the ability to speak, but it was never spoken of until the serpent decided to talk.
The only thing
Whereas,
the only thing that sets this if we're just judging by the text, right? The only thing that sets this serpent apart is that it was more crafty or more cunning than what? Than all other creatures. This was a creature.
well,
They have dominion over it.
why would? Well, hold on a second. Let's go ahead and back that up then. I want to be with you on this. However, God would know every creature that exists inside of the garden, right? Why allow the snake inside of the garden? Why allow temptation inside of a system that you completely understand
Yeah.
and will fall to temptation?
I think that's a really interesting question, but I do think that's like out of bounds for like I think that's a little off topic from we haven't gotten to the end of did Adam and
One
Eve
thing.
know and were they
Well,
culpable for
here's
disobeying?
Can I add something?
sure. Well,
Just
let's
on
get to
the
that
on
then.
the argument.
Let's get to that then. If that's going to be the contention, the contention,
Oops, I
as
wasn't
far as I
muted.
see when it comes to this, is that Adam and Eve were granted dominion over a certain set of animals and told not to eat from
Oh.
a specific. However, that authority was neither evil nor good, and therefore, when they came across another authority that gave them opposite information about whether or not eating from the fruit would kill them or whether or not it would grant them eternal life or anything like that, they were presented with equal authority on what is going to happen to them in existence, because God had not afforded them infinite knowledge upon things. They had
Why do you think that
he
they
had
would have
very
viewed this as equal authority? That's what I'm getting hung up on. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
because there's no reason not to.
Well, there is reason. He gave them dominion over creatures, and this was a creature.
No,
So
no,
they would.
but well, hold on a second. Here's the thing: if the serpent entered, the garden and was capable of doing these things, why would God even allow it?
No, that's not answering the question, right? You're making a
No, no,
claim
no, no,
that
no,
they
no,
would have
no, no.
viewed this as an equal authority.
I'm making a claim as to why God would potentially create an adversary for His will when His will could just be done regardless.
Okay, you're not making a claim. You're asking a question. You're asking why did God allow the serpent into the garden? Okay,
Well,
this is to me.
I apologize. The claim is God made a serpent because He did,
Yeah,
and the difference between the serpent asking a question or the serpent giving information about reality that God was unwilling to give, and that information was true versus what God was willing to give to them
it was not true.
makes a difference. It makes a difference between their understanding of good and evil until that point where they ate the fruit.
Okay, the part that the misstep you're making, and the
I,
assumption that you're.
I think that you are believing I'm making a misstep, but that's totally fine. Whatever. What misstep I'm making?
I was about to tell you. So when you say that they are presented with equal authority, and how are they supposed to know the difference? Like it's not their fault.
Exactly. That's
That's
why.
that's that's the
That's
part.
why.
Yeah, okay. That's the part that I'm pushing back on. Is clearly they understood the difference between creator and creature. They understood they have dominion over creatures.
No.
And what is this serpent? It's a creature. So they would not have viewed this
Hold on a
as the
second.
same authority as God.
What the difference is that the serpent is not a creature. The serpent is a different being entirely unto the garden.
That's not true.
That's kind
It
of the
says it
point.
describes it as the craftiest of all wild
That's
animals, right? Or of all creatures.
right, but there's okay. The most the general interpretation, regardless of you're wanting to be, is that this creature that was interpreting into the will of God was Satan, not just a serpent creature that didn't like what God was doing. Regardless, either what
You're
you're doing
breaking up
is
there, Jack.
God is allowing a being to exist. Hold on. God is allowing a being to exist that is going to go against the grand goals, quote unquote, that it has for humanity. This is an allowance of an ultimate being.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna judge whether or not Adam and Eve are culpable, we would need to do our best to understand what information they had present and what they did with that information. Okay, even if
The information they had present was God said, all these animals under your dominion,
Mhm. And then one
and
of those
that
animals
you
that
are
were
not
under their
to eat from
dominion,
these specific fruit.
one of those animals that were
Is
under
the
their
serpent
dominion said
specifically under
something
the
contrary to
is
God.
the why hold on a second. Let's get into that. One of the animals under their dominion said something.
Yeah.
Why are they capable of saying something?
I don't see why that's relevant to their culpability.
Why? No. Stop. Why are they capable of saying something?
I don't know. I don't know why God gave animals the
They're
ability to
capable.
talk.
No, they're capable. Hold on. They're capable. Well, there we go. Exactly what you just said. They are capable of saying something because your God allowed them to get into the garden to say something about the existence that these people were living.
Sure.
Meaning that if they have the ability, if this thing has the ability to get into the garden and have a say so about the way that these beings are living, he could manipulate what is going on with God because they don't know good and bad, they don't know good and evil, and he could manipulate what is happening. meaning that we get down to good and evil to a subjective level, and we find that even when Adam even when Eve eats the apple and finds out the knowledge between good and evil, that they have finally done something wrong. You have misstepped in trying to create an area where these people have done something wrong without having the knowledge of good or evil. You are trying to attempt to put them into a box where they don't have the ability to say anything about their circumstance.
So, like I said, they did have the knowledge they needed to approach this situation and handle it responsibly. They were given dominion over
Prove that.
creatures. They were because they were given direct commands and able to repeat the commands. They understood what they were given according to the story. They were given dominion over creatures. This was a creature. They had dominion. What was their responsibility? To shut down this lying serpent,
can you
get it out of
can you prove any other creatures talk? Can you prove any other creatures talk?
It's an argument from silence. It's really irrelevant.
No. Can we prove any other creatures talk?
Why would that change?
No. Can we prove any other creatures?
No.
Because if other creatures had the ability to talk, then the idea of a serpent saying some wild shit would be like, oh, wow, this is just an animal saying some wild shit. If you don't have the ability for creatures to talk beforehand, then this becomes an entirely different scenario where these people have never encountered that.
No, because God didn't just give them dominion over non-talking animals. He gave them dominion over all animals. So that's as much information as they
what
needed.
animal can you describe what animals talk, please, for me?
Well, it doesn't outline which animals can talk.
No, can you describe what animals talk, please, for me?
We don't get that outlined.
Can you describe what animals talk for me?
I don't have that information. I mean, we know donkeys talk.
Okay, then animals don't talk then.
That's just an argument
in that kind of an instance.
All right, I gotta ring the bell because we're getting a little bit. I want to a little bit long in the episode here, but I want to get Robin in. But after I read this, so Brody, you've been bringing up argument from silence. So just for the record, weak or fallacious. This is weak, or this means weak or fallacious when there is no reason to expect the source would mention the fact. It can be strong and reasonable when the source would almost certainly have mentioned the fact if it had occurred. So that's just, you might want to clarify.
Just to clarify that, I don't think that it's like story altering information, whether or not they can talk, because they weren't just given dominion over talking creatures or non-talking creatures. That's kind of irrelevant to the story.
But just to put a cap on that before we go to Robin, do you think there is no reason to expect the source would mention the fact in this case? I assume you think that?
Yeah, I think there's no reason for them to mention and outline which animals can talk and which can't.
No, there certainly is, because the only animal that ever fucking talked was a serpent. The only animal that ever fucking talked was a serpent in your fucking edition. So yes, that is the reason why it is amiable to add that. There has been no... Prove another animal talked in that same Genesis. No, fuck that. Prove an animal ever talked other than the serpent. Go.
Tell me why this is so important to you.
It's very important because if the serpent talked, then God allowed it to talk. Okay. God said it's good for you to fucking confuse them. That's why. That's why I'm getting into this so bad. You goofy fuck.
No, Jack.
It's called out. No. Like, this is actually like called out. Like at the beginning of Genesis 3, like it's called out that the serpent was created. More, I think in New King James they use like subtle, which is like an old way of saying like nuanced. And like in newer versions it says like crafty or smart or something like that. Like it is specifically called out that like the serpent was created in this way. And you bring up an incredibly valid question. Why? Like,
why?
Yes.
And the thing is that this won't get answered, and it's not super important to the person that I'm
I
asking
think
the
it's a
question
very
of.
important question, but I just don't think we've I think you're kind of evading the first issue you brought up of whether they had.
Evaded.
But yeah, well, because you brought up this whole issue about if they were culpable and if they had this knowledge, and we were talking about that, and every time we get
They
to
didn't.
close to
No,
the
no, no. I
bottom
was
of
saying
it,
they didn't
you
have the
switched to,
knowledge.
well, why did
That
God
was very
allow it?
important. No, hold on a second. No. I very much said that they didn't have the knowledge.
I know
That
that's
was
what we're
very important. Is
agreeing
that they
on,
did?
right?
Well, they did have
No,
knowledge.
you
They did have
changed. You
knowledge of what the tree of knowledge was, and what the
did.
consequences to eating from that tree would
Them
provide.
having knowledge of what's the right choice is independent from the question of why did God allow the serpent in the garden. Those are two separate issues. I'm just trying to stick to one at a time. We can talk maybe after the
Oh,
live is over. We can get into our own channel. We can talk about that. 'Cause
no,
I think, it's an interesting
no.
question. It
The
just doesn't
God
apply
being
to the.
in the serpent, the God being in the serpent being in the garden because God allowed it was literally just because God allowed it. There's no
No,
other
I think
reason.
God didn't
I think
just
there's
God is.
some
allow
good
it.
reasons for
God
why
didn't
he would
just
allow
allow it.
it.
God created it.
Yeah, exactly.
God
Yeah,
intentionally.
God made that a thing.
He intentionally
That
made
is
the
a
tree.
yeah. Like imagine a Garden of Eden that didn't have a tree of good and knowledge of evil in it, and all that would do is just make humanity not culpable for the sins that this fucking religion decides to say that you have. It's fucking disgusting.
All
Okay,
right.
that's a very
Let's
non-surprising position to be hold.
Robin, what did you want to add?
First, let me say, Brody, thank you. You're very I think that you show a lot of fortitude coming in here and with all these atheists.
I agree.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, hell yeah.
yeah.
I
But
agree.
my main contention, like, I understand what Jack is saying, like, and because, well, like, based on what we know, how like sounds are made and talking is produced, it requires vocal cords, something that snakes throughout evolutionary history have never had. So, so if the serpent did speak, it would have to be through supernatural means. But I think that the more important thing is, well, another thing too is in Hebrew, the serpent does not represent Satan. Like, that is not
True. I do know that. Yeah, that's true.
that doesn't match up. Well, like but like Christians believe that though. They believe that's Satan, and if you go back into the Hebrew, teachings, who actually wrote those stories,
It's just the deceiver.
Yeah, that's not their belief.
It's just the deceiver, not Satan. Yeah.
Yeah, the accuser, the same one that was in with Job, and so like that's like to Christians imply that is Satan, but they're reading into that. I think that but we know based on evolutionary discoveries of our the fossils of the Australopithecus and various other species that predate us, even in the ape line, that Adam and Eve, we did not begin from two people in a garden, like so. And I think that to ignore all that and try to still claim that and I think that's why probably Christians resist so much of the evidence of evolution, is because it does destroy the ideal of original sin in some way. If Adam and Eve did not, eat this forbidden fruit, and I think that it's something though that Christians have got to come to grips with about eventually.
So to clarify, I was always taught in like a scholastic Old Testament whatever that in the book of Job and like Old Testament broadly, that Satan was a character. What's up?
I'm sorry, I said the most gross book. Look at that.
Depending on how you like interpret, whatever. But like
I interpret it as the grossest book.
Sure, but like okay,
sorry.
So no, you're good. Like, but Satan in Hebrew is like it means like adversary, right? So like Satan didn't have like a specifically like a negative connotation until Christianity and until like second century Christianity, right? Well,
how can the Almighty have an adversary?
No. Like his job was to challenge people, like in the war, like in the Old Testament, Satan's job was to challenge people, and like it's easy to concede that see that as like evolving into like this villain, but like as his as like a messenger, that's like what he primarily was responsible for doing.
Well, it's also like it has to do with the divine counsel, right? So like if you think of a courtroom, there's a prosecutor and a defending attorney, right? The prosecutor isn't necessarily the bad guy, but it's just somebody has the job in the divine counsel to be the accuser, which is Satan's job. He's been accusing from the beginning, right? So he's the one who says, this person sinned this many times, you ought to punish him, whatever. Whereas Jesus becomes the advocate, who becomes like the defense attorney. We learn in the New Testament. So that it's a little Michael Hyde.
I'm under the impression.
I want Brett to get in on this. Actually, if we can get Brett in,
just really quick though, I'm under the impression that Jesus himself, like heaven and hell, in terms of like that kind of thing, is like super new relative to theology broadly, and but like I'm under the impression that Jesus probably did not believe in a hell, like the actual historical Jesus. And I think like
he did. He
did talk about hell more than anyone else in the book.
He believed in a hell more than anybody else did. Yeah.
We're opening up a lot of new cans of worms, but we're almost done here, Moloch. But yeah, please twist it off when you get a second.
What? Who do you mean?
Oh, you, Moloch. Feel free to finish where you were going. I just wanted to mention the show's almost over.
Focus. Keeping me focused is good. Okay, yeah, sure. So, Sheol, like, okay, so it's like Bart Ehrman, blah, 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 like, if you already know that, but like, basically, like,
Bart Ehrman.
Yeah, so basically, like, it was interpreted by scholars that Sheol was like this kind of like Hades afterlife that like the Jews and the Hebrews believed in, but like it might have just been a literal place and we just like misinterpreted it for like a really long time, but like Jesus talks about hell and all that stuff, but if you look at the Gospels or like the places that he talks about them, I think they're mostly in John, which is like the furthest gospel away from his life, right? Like I'm under this impression. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty convinced of this.
I disagree with all of that.
Okay.
I think Perry's just being a turd.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett, and then we'll wrap up here.
You need a straight yes or a no if you're able to give one. From your interpretation of this story, then I am to fully live or fully find whatever meaning or reconciliation with the universe or a deity, I have to accept Jesus or to take on my sin. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Disgusting.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Well,
Jack. It's all good, dude. Chill.
No, I'm just sorry. I apologize.
He's not forcing you to believe it.
I didn't say he was. I just said it was disgusting. I apologize.
I'm curious. Can I challenge that for that assertion really quick? Because I'm curious for people to believe this. Just super quick. Do you feel that what about people that live before Jesus? And then what about people that have no exposure to Jesus, or like it was impossible for them to have exposure to Jesus? Like, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I mean, people who lived before Jesus were under a different covenant, which a covenant is just a way that people relate to God and a way that God relates to people. Under the new covenant, Jesus makes it very clear that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that nobody gets to the Father except through him. Which means that people. So there's two different views, and I mean it was probably more than two, but like some Christians will say that we are all responsible to follow whatever knowledge we have received and live a good life and all that kind of stuff. And then there's other hardcore Christians, like your boy Brody here, who thinks that you have to follow Jesus. There is no other hope, and that's why it's up to Christians to spread the message of Jesus to the ends of the earth, so that.
So what about people?
Let's let Brett. Brett didn't get to finish his stuff, and then we're
Brett
really
doesn't
gonna.
get it. I'll be a cunt later.
So
we're really gonna wrap up after Brett, and then we'll move to the tavern.
Okay, sure.
I would say if people independently and without coercion decide that for themselves, that's fine. But that people have no right to force that onto others. And people do try to force it onto others throughout history, and we're witnessing that right now. No religion and followers have the right to say that others must believe this concept of like reconciling with the deity. Because again, to my point a little bit ago about perpetual warfare. Secondly, and then I'll try to be concise here on this one. I don't know that it's psychologically sound to tell kids that their origin from this garden, which no physical historical evidence, that they're in a perpetual fall or a disassociation with the deity. And it's not enough to just be a good person. It's not enough just to, go do in your community and work and be working with other people and the idea of camaraderie there and such, and talking about biology and other things. People just try to sometimes force the idea of, no, you're being sinful. You're in a state of sin. You're in this state of perpetual suffering. I, for example, would feel a deep sense of moral depravity if I knew that a fellow teacher was telling that to kids, knowing what they need to go through training and becoming a professional educator, private or public school or other. It's one thing for a person to talk to their children about it, but then to ignore the other part, which is that we really don't know if there's an afterlife. It's a very big unknown. And I think that if we tell kids our team is right in doing so, I think human psychology continually leads to separation. And I see the war, those species just continuing bloodshed because of that. I'm not saying it has to happen. If someone wants to accept Jesus because they feel they need a personal savior, do you, honey boo boo. But to say that sin is equal to our primate instincts from East Africa that we're struggling with for warfare, lust, greed, that are real problems and people go to prison for, right, for socialization society, I don't think there's a comparison there. Oh, we can't. Oh, sorry, Trav.
I'm trolling you. I'm trolling you.
No. I hope
I just couldn't.
No,
I just couldn't
resist.
resist.
Get you demonetized?
By saying honey boo boo.
Well,
if it happened, if it happened because of honey boo boo,
she
then
sued you.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I don't know if she's literate. So she might not sue you. But right. Brody, I look at it in my village, in my school, I have kids of almost every walk of life, of every religion and every race. And I have Christian, Hindu, Muslim. I don't know if I have any Jewish kids. I see it as very important to bring them into the fold of what a humanity could look like, where people maybe have their religion, but they don't take it to the point of, you have to be on my team or I'm always going to see you as suspect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you.
But you had a good point about people being scared of death and the afterlife. And if that piece of someone, I would never go to a person in their dying deathbed and be like, I don't know if there's a deity or not, so good luck. I wouldn't say shit like that.
I had to
No.
do that this week. And not say
It's not.
there's like I had to pray with somebody as
Yeah.
they were on their deathbed, somebody who was
Yeah.
like close to my age, and it just seems like, I mean, this doesn't mean that it's true, but it does
Yeah,
seem
but if
like
that
it's like some hope I can give them, you know. And when
that's
people say, well, like all we really need in this life are the physical needs, it's like I've seen some people who need some hope, really badly.
Well, hope
But
hope is fundamentally physical, mental, and social health. A thing that's going to
okay, Trav,
positively
yeah,
affect.
yeah.
But do you understand what I'm saying? Like hope is
Yeah, no,
is not
I think you're
nothing
right.
to me. Yeah, hope is not
That's
nothing
true.
to me. Yeah,
That's facts. Look, your name's not Benson. What is it, Brett?
Brett.
Brett. Yeah, Brett.
If like, I think if Christianity was not true, then I'd like love and agree with everything that you're saying. Because I think that if it is just a matter of taste, then we should all just coexist and let people believe what they want to believe and live what they call a happy life and be free to do it. We shouldn't try to convince anyone of anything, especially if it leads to wars and conflict and all that. But like, if this Jesus guy did say what the Bible says he said, and he was right, like, man, you better bet I'd be willing to die for it and argue people on it, you know?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with people believing that. I'm saying though, like the unfortunate reality that history shows that with so many sects and denominations of
Yeah.
Christianity infighting, and the Crusades, Christians, Muslims, both going dogmatically, right? What we're seeing today, still in the world today, with dogmatic religion, where it's put on by force, and it doesn't. In many circles, it claims it's doing better than the rest of the world, and it's just psychologically not. Back to Travis's point on the susceptibility of being a cult, or at least maybe the cult is a living person and the religion is a passed on person. I can't remember, but yeah, I think that I don't see it as paramount that people are no longer scared of whether it's an afterlife or not. I do see it as paramount that humans stop killing one another over saying I'm on the right team.
Sure.
Because that tribalization is not love in its most basic form. It's a thing to say, yeah, we need boundaries. Humans need boundaries, self-protection to a certain degree. But if we start out by saying the separation occurs in the different denominations and stuff, then we're already headed down conflict, because what one Christian will say is not what another Christian will say.
Oh yeah, believe me, I know.
Yeah. Oh, and if you asked me to go, I'm in a school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have several kids that are not Christian, not Catholic. It's predominantly Catholic, but not all. Would I be morally right to go, if I believed in the given religion, to go tell them, hey, you know what? You're actually some people I need to talk to here because you aren't following the religion I do.
Yeah, I don't think that's the place for that.
Maybe it is on the bedside when you were there for that person, if that brought that person comfort and they needed that, and what Trav or myself or any other person offer might be challenging for them if they need it in their final moments to, have some comfort there. Thomas, I don't know how you feel about like the deathbed stuff that I was just mentioning, but
for someone who's on their deathbed, and like I use the example of children, I will do whatever it takes to make their final moments less painful for them. Robin and some other people said, last, I think it was last night, maybe the night before, that it would mean the world to their parents that if they're on their deathbed, that they said, you know what, Mom, guess what? I actually found my way back to Jesus. if they asked it or they brought that thing up, if they were like, before I go, I just want to know you'll be okay and that you'll be with me in the afterlife. Will you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And then it's like Robin, or I would say, if it was a close family member to me, I'd be like, yes, I do. Yeah, I do.
Just like if it was like a kid's last wish to see Santa before they died, you would take them and tell them, yeah, Santa's right here. You wouldn't be like, sorry to break your heart.
I think it would be brutal. And I criticize hard Sam Harris's book that I think is quite simple-minded about the issue of lying. Lying can be of course the most ethical thing to do. There are very good lies to tell. There are very bad lies to tell. There are bad lies that are righteous, and there are bad lies that are wrongful. So, sometimes lying is right. Yeah.
And Brody, does it make sense? Because I'm seeing this now as Travis saying this. His position on overall well-being and moral quest, like to be there on the bedside of a 8-year-old, right, who doesn't have the life experience we do, who is in that perilous state of fear and suffering, right? Try to convert them or not convert them. That's the wrong word. To try to talk to them about the science and other stuff like that. If it would create confusion and just fear and more. Yeah. And so I would agree in that sense of, even an elderly person or someone else, like I don't want to cause them more suffering. And what I would also say is you are loved. We will remember you. And wherever you go, we wish you well. Sending them off in a good way. We wish you well wherever you go with it. And,
Yeah, I think I understand that. Like, I think Perry got me to finally start reading some Nietzsche, because he said, you can't really call yourself an intellectual Christian until you've gotten in the ring with Nietzsche and gotten slapped around a bit. So one of the things that Nietzsche talks about in the gay science is how we have these like helpful errors or these helpful lies that have allowed us to survive and flourish as a society. And I think he takes it a little too far, but I think I understand that concept, that it could be like the thing that person needs for a flourishing life is for them to hold on to something, whether or not it's true.
Yes. I use the example, Brody, that that if it is true for the heroin addict who has just found themselves a way to become clean, that they found that way through Jesus, it is unethical for me at that moment to try to have an epistemic debate with them about whether or not Jesus actually existed, or whether or not.
Yeah, that's a great example.
The ethical thing for me to do there is to matter about what is demonstrably best for their physical, mental, and social health, and sometimes that could mean going to Jesus, even though I have my epistemic and some ethical issues. But the thing primarily that I'm interested in is that at this moment it's keeping them off heroin, which is a big thing, and trying to detox and get better. It's a huge first step. So this is where I get into issues with people who hold truth as their highest ethic. Like I think that's that can
pretty
lead
strong
to some
defeater against that view.
Really, really bad ethical outcomes there. But yeah, anyways, we should wrap it up. It is definitely TAV time. Anyone who comes across this, you can join our Discord server. Just search the Pangburn Universe Discord. You'll find it anywhere online. There's links in the description here. And after our shows, we go into our off-air channels, the ones that aren't recorded, and we have general chats about all kinds of things and get to know each other, make friends, and it's a great community here. So consider joining us. special thanks to Brody for taking on all the heat and questions and everything tonight. That was, it's not easy to be the only guy. But Brody, I will say, if you have friends in other servers, people who like to talk about these topics, whether you agree with them or not, please do bring them along. It would also be nice to have more Christians in the server. So,
sounds good.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, thanks everyone, and make sure you're out there